Chapter 431. After leaving the Uchiha clan's Naka shrine, Hyojin told Itachi to stay close to Jishui and protect Jishui through the adaptation period. After all, the elusive Obsidian and my clan's Orochimaru are both threats that can't be underestimated. Moreover, both of them have the motive to deal with Jishui, the current #1 expert of Uchiha clan, because to deal with the Uchiha clan, they must overcome Jishui. After saying goodbye to Jishui and Itachi, Hyojin walked slowly in the direction of his home under the quiet moonlight. On the way, Hyojin thought about the changes that happened during the day while secretly rejoicing. Kuroto should indeed be thankful that he didn't become arrogant after obtaining the Tenseigan, exposing his identity to the public and exposing himself to the eyes of his enemies. If that's the case, he should be on tenterhooks right now and always be on guard against Obsidian's plot. And judging from the way Obsidian plotted against 4 generations Naruto, he's the kind of guy who can give up his bottom line in order to achieve his goal. If he really wants to plot against Hyojin, then everything and everyone around Hyojin will become his target. At that time, Hyojin will really be impossible to guard against. Fortunately, Kuroto has been hiding himself and Amitsukami very well, so it is unlikely that the Obito would focus his attention on him. The captain of Konoha Umbu, so the probability of the Obito specifically targeting him is very small. And because of Amitsukami's deep cover, it has actually restrained Obsidian, so Obsidian and Akatsuki dare not act rashly. They are probably investigating Amitsukami's traces all over the world right now, right? Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. Before finding Amitsukami, who is ready to take advantage of the situation, Akatsuki shouldn't dare to divert their attention to deal with the 5 great shinobi villages. After all, the lesson from last time was too deep. Even Nagato, who has the Rinnegan, almost lost his life. Even if Akatsuki is reluctant, they have to admit that Amitsukami is a real threat to them. The Obsidian would not be distracted by destroying the Uchiha clan like he did in the original timeline. However, if they didn't make a move on Mai and the Uchiha clan, they would never be able to find any leads on Amitsukami. This was undoubtedly a vicious cycle. In my guest house, Kimimaro looked at the night scene outside the window with a complicated expression. The previous scenes kept flashing in his mind, especially the scene of Hyojin mocking Orochimaru. It was even more unforgettable, and his killing intent was boiling. Suddenly, a black shadow quietly entered the room. "Who?" Kimimaro quickly turned around and stared coldly at the intruder. The black shadow smiled and said, "As expected of Kimimaro, Do." Kimimaro's face sank as he asked, "What do you want from me?" Do was Orochimaru's research assistant and intelligence officer, and Kimimaro's shinobi group was Orochimaru's direct subordinates. Therefore, Kimimaro and Do weren't subordinates, but colleagues. That's why Kimimaro didn't speak politely to Do. Do adjusted his glasses and smiled. "I heard about what happened during the day. How do you feel about defeating the genius of the Uchiha clan?" "The genius of the Uchiha clan? Humph, he can't even withstand a single blow." Because the victory was too easy, Kimimaro didn't feel any sense of accomplishment. Do said casually, "Yes, compared to Hyojin who betrayed Orochimaru-sama, the kid of the Uchiha clan isn't worth mentioning." Hearing Do mention Hyojin, Kimimaro's face suddenly became gloomy. Kimimaro didn't care about other people's insults, but he couldn't ignore Orochimaru's insults. Not to mention that Hyojin not only betrayed Orochimaru, but also ridiculed Orochimaru. This was unbearable for him. After a while, Kimimaro seemed to have made up his mind and asked, "Do you know his address?" Do was surprised. "What do you want?" "This is Mai." Kimimaro said coldly, "Tell me his address. You don't need to care about other things." Do hesitated for a long time, then handed Kimimaro a piece of paper and said, "Be careful. If there's no chance, don't make a move." Whoosh, Kimimaro coldly took the note and didn't say anything. He turned around and disappeared from the room. After Kimimaro left, a strange smile appeared on Do's face. Just like Kimimaro was jealous of Uchiha, Do was also jealous of Orochimaru's experimental assistant, Hyojin. Every time Orochimaru mentioned Hyojin in front of him, his hatred would deepen. At this moment, a hoarse voice suddenly came from behind Do. Do, I don't remember allowing you to do this kind of thing. Do's whole body seemed to be struck by lightning. He trembled and turned around. He knelt on the ground and said respectfully, Orochimaru-sama. Orochimaru slowly walked out of the shadow. Aren't you going to give me an explanation? Do's forehead and cheeks were covered in a layer of sweat. He swallowed and explained, Orochimaru-sama, I just wanted to help you get rid of the traitor. Is that so? With a smile, Orochimaru looked out of the window. Get up. Seeing that Orochimaru didn't seem to blame him, Do let out a sigh of relief. As he got up, he realized that if Orochimaru had objected to what he had done, he would have stopped him. He wouldn't have waited for Kimimaro to leave. Looking at the night view of my outside the window, Orochimaru said lightly, It's good to test him. I don't like that guy anymore. At first, Orochimaru planned to use the impure earth reincarnation to give his teacher, the 3 generations Naruto, a hard time during the alliance ceremony. When he thought that his teacher, the 3 generations Naruto, will be forced to fight against his teacher, the first Naruto and the second Naruto. The scene of the 3 Naruto fighting in my made Orochimaru very excited. For him, besides pursuing the profound meaning of immortality, destroying everything that his teacher, the 3 generations Naruto cherished, had become his only pleasure. However, he didn't expect that the defense of Mai was much tighter than what the spy had reported. Moreover, the representatives of the Sand Crypsis village, the Kuzunobi village, and the Takenobi village were also quite strong. Therefore, he didn't take the risk to launch an attack during the ceremony. After all, the impure earth reincarnation of the first and second generations was still in the experimental state. He didn't know how strong they were. On the other side, on the street of Mai, Kimimaro's whole body turned into a black shadow, avoiding the moonlight and the pedestrians. He quickly moved through the darkness. Chapter 432. Today is really tiring. A Konoha ninja who was patrolling the streets was smoking while complaining to his companions around him. His companion also said, Yes, but fortunately, no one is making trouble. I maintained a high level of security, but it didn't come without a price. The most obvious one was that the workload of the ninjas on duty had increased a lot. The smoking ninja threw the cigarette, but on the ground, then stepped on it and extinguished the sparks. It's already so late. I don't think there will be any more problems. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared from a dark corner and accurately punched the ninja's throat. The Mai ninja who was suddenly attacked didn't even have the time to call for help. He fell to the ground and fainted. The other Mai ninja was shocked and said, You. As soon as he said that, a sharp pain came from his abdomen. Then his whole body was thrown out by the huge force from his abdomen. He crashed heavily into the corner of the wall and fainted. How can I be so weak? Kimimaro slowly put down his right foot, and a trace of doubt flashed in his cold eyes. Because of his young age and simple mind, Kimimaro was completely reliant on Orochimaru and Do for information about the outside world. Except for killing some bandits and traitorous ninjas under Orochimaru's arrangement, his contact with the outside world was very limited, and he didn't know much about the ninja world. In his mind, the enemy should be strong, but suddenly, they couldn't even withstand a single blow. This was Kimimaro's current feeling. Looking at the 2 unconscious Mai ninjas on the ground, Kimimaro thought, Orochimaru, Sama wouldn't lie to me. It seems that I have become stronger. Kimimaro didn't know that he was actually in a high position in the ninja world. In his normal state, his strength was close to that of a Jonin, and when he used the curse seal, his strength was close to that of an elite Jonin. No matter which village he was in, he was an elite. This was also the main reason why Orochimaru acquiesced when Do instigated him to deal with Hyojin. Although Konoha's security has increased a lot, most of them are concentrated in the core areas such as the Hokage building, Konoha Hospital, Root Base, and so on. Although there are many patrols in the ordinary residential areas, these patrols composed of Chunin and Jinin naturally can't stop Kimimaro. After dragging the 2 unconscious Mai ninjas into the shadow of the street, Kimimaro identified the direction and immediately disappeared like a ghost. After crossing a few blocks, Kimimaro landed on the roof of a house. Standing on the roof, Kuroda glanced coldly at a small courtyard across the street. According to the information given to him by Kuroda, the courtyard in front of him is Kuroda's home. I will make you pay. After making up his mind, Kimimaro's figure flickered as he crossed the street and quietly sneaked into the courtyard. After quietly listening in the courtyard for a while and confirming that no one in the house had noticed him, he lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and leaped into the house through the window on the second floor. Although there was no light in the house, the moonlight was bright, so he could see everything in the house. You? Kimimaro was shocked because he found that Hyojin was sitting in the house, looking at him calmly. There was no change in his face, as if he had expected it. Hyojin smiled faintly and said, "It seems that my luck is not bad." The reason why Kuroda deliberately provoked Orochimaru on the street before was to lure Kimimaro to his door. Because of the Obito incident, he felt a lot of pressure, and he had to speed up his Kekkei Genkai plan. If he took the initiative to find Orochimaru and asked for Orochimaru cells, not only would it waste time and energy, but it would also be seen through by Orochimaru, who was also a researcher. Therefore, at that time, Suijin had the idea of luring Kimimaro to take the initiative to come to him. However, the village was under martial law, so he wasn't sure if Kimimaro had the guts to come to his door, so he could only wait at home and try his luck. So you were prepared. Kimimaro quickly hid the shock on his face and took out a kunai from the storage bag on his waist. He said coldly, "That's good too. I also want to have a fair fight with you." "Silly boy, a fair fight is just a story in a novel," Yi Zichen said. Then, Hyojin slowly reached out his right hand to Kimimaro. In an instant, Kimimaro felt an unprecedented suction force pulling his body. His tender body, which was only 10 years old, could not resist the pull of this huge suction force. He instantly lost his balance and was pulled towards Kuroda. What technique is this? Kimimaro's face couldn't remain cold anymore. Bang! Soon, Kimimaro's body was sucked into Hyojin's right hand, and there was a deep sound of a palm hitting his chest. Kimimaro was shocked and wanted to use the teleportation technique to temporarily pull away from Hyojin. However, he suddenly found that the chakra in his body was not under his control. At this time, from the corner of his eyes, he noticed that under Suijin's right hand that was pressing on his chest, there were many ink-colored seals spreading out. These ink-colored sealing spells were like chains, spreading in all directions with his chest as the center. In a breath's time, they had covered his entire body. Kimimaro was startled and said in surprise, "You can use the sealing technique without a seal. If it's only at this level, I can still use the sealing technique without a seal." Hyojin retracted his right hand and walked towards the cabinet on the wall. Kimimaro, who was bound by the four-symbol seal, gritted his teeth and wanted to use the seal to forcefully break the four-symbol seal's control over his body. When Hyojin came to the cabinet, he didn't even turn his head. Instead, he rummaged in the cabinet and said, "Are you sure you want to do this? If this gets out, Orochimaru will be in trouble." Hearing Hyojin mention Orochimaru, Kimimaro's face flashed with hesitation. At this time, Hyojin walked over with a large tray of blood samples and cell tissue tools. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't do anything to you." Looking at the smile on Hyojin's face, Kimimaro suddenly had a bad feeling. Chapter 433. Because of his rich experience of participating in Orochimaru's experiments, Kimimaro quickly calmed down and recognized the various instruments on the tray in Kuroda's hand. "What do you want?" Kimimaro frowned. The two red dots on his eyebrows were almost squeezed together. Hyojin smiled and said, "As my prisoner, shouldn't you pay some ransom?" "Don't worry, I won't take your life. I just want to collect some of your cells. I'm not any less curious about the bone vein than Orochimaru." Kimimaro knew that Kuroda used to be Orochimaru's experimental assistant and also a researcher, so he didn't doubt Kuroda's words. He just said coldly, "I lost to you this time because I was careless. Next time you won't be so relaxed. Hyojin collected Kimamaro's cells and didn't pay attention to Kimamaro. Kimamaro was also unyielding, so he didn't say anything. He silently accepted it as a loser. Considering that there weren't many opportunities to collect like this, Hyojin collected twice the normal amount. He also took a small amount of Kimamaro's blood and hair. After storing all the collected samples, Suijin remembered the cause of Kimamaro's death in the original timeline and asked casually, "By the way, is there any change in your body recently?" Kimamaro's eyes narrowed. "How did you know?" He didn't have time to tell Orochimaru about what Lotus told him, so he was surprised how Hyojin knew. Hyojin then asked, "Is it a blood disease? What's the treatment plan for Orochimaru?" Kimamaro's face was full of doubt, but he still replied, "I haven't told Orochimaru-sama yet. If you don't want to die, you'd better tell Orochimaru about this matter immediately. If he intervenes early enough, you may be able to survive." Kuroda was taken aback for a moment before saying, "If you don't want to die, you'd better tell Orochimaru about this matter immediately." Kimamaro said coldly, "You don't need to care about my matters." Hyojin smiled and removed the 4-symbol seal on Kimamaro's body. Kuroda didn't say this out of kindness. His main purpose was to understand Orochimaru's research progress on the corpse bone vein through Orochimaru's treatment plan for blood disease Genkai. If the bloodline of the Kagaya clan could really be traced back to the ancestor of Chakra, Otsutsuki Kagaya, then the upper limit of the power of the corpse bone bloodline would be very high. It should be noted that the mutual death gray bones that Kagaya used was a killing technique that would kill anyone who touched it. It didn't matter if it was yin-yang release or immortal arts. None of them would be able to block it. "Okay, you can go now." After a pause, Hyojin warned, "This is the number of people who can kill you can't be counted with 2 hands. If you dare to act recklessly again, even Orochimaru won't be able to save you." Kimamaro snorted. Then his body flashed and disappeared from the room. After Kimamaro left, Hyojin murmured, "I need to speed up the progress of the blood sequence net plan. I'm afraid Nagato and Obsidian won't give me too much time." Thinking of this, Hyojin summoned a ninja crow in a secret underground base of the Akatsuki. A whirlpool suddenly appeared, and Obsidian, who had his left eye back, walked out of the whirlpool. He took off the mask on his face and threw it aside. Zetsu walked over and observed Obsidian's left eye. He asked, "How does this left eye feel? How long do you need to activate the Manjikyu Sharingan?" Obsidian replied, "It's already a Manjikyu Sharingan." Zetsu was a little surprised and praised, as expected of the person chosen by Madara. "No, it was already a Manjikyu Sharingan before I took it back." Saying that, Obsidian fell into a short memory and sighed. "Kakashi's talent is really—" Zetsu was surprised and said, "He activated the Manjikyu Sharingan. A ninja who didn't have the bloodline of Uchiha, nor the bloodline of Thousand Hands, and didn't have much to do with the descendants of the Sage of Six Paths, could actually evolve the Manjikyu Sharingan into the Manjikyu Sharingan with his own talent. Such talent was really amazing." It seemed that he didn't want to mention Kakashi, so Obsidian asked, "Forget it. Let's get down to business. How is Nagato's body?" Zetsu laughed and said, "Hey, it's unexpectedly good. The Uzumaki clan and the Thousand Hands clan are really close relatives. It's much easier to fuse the bloodline than I thought." Obsidian said in a low voice, "I hope we're doing the right thing." Obsidian knew very well that if Nagato was too strong, it would be disadvantageous to his control. However, in the previous battle in the Hidden Rain village, he almost lost the Rinnegan, the core of the Eye of the Moon project, so he had to make a compromise and share the first-generation cell transplantation technology with Nagato. But it could be foreseen that the enhanced Nagato will be more difficult to control, which is one of the reasons why he made up his mind to retrieve the left eye. Zetsu reported to Obsidian, "The investigation of Amitsukami is still fruitless. It seems that they don't exist. Whether it is the Snow Clan or the magnetic Sand Crypsis village, there are no useful clues. They seem to have appeared out of thin air, and they don't have the interpersonal relationships that normal people should have. Continue to investigate. We must find them." As he said, Obsidian walked to a high wall. This high wall, upon closer inspection, was filled with hidden boxes for storing Sharingan. Each hidden box stored a Sharingan of 3 Magatama, stacked layer upon layer, filling up the entire wall. These are all the collections of Uchiha Madara. As the former patriarch of the Uchiha clan, he also brought all the Sharingan collected by the Uchiha clan over the years out of Mai before he left. Standing in front of the wall where the Sharingan is stored, Obito took off his robe and said to Zetsu, "I need to transplant 1 or 2 more Sharingan as a sacrifice to activate Izanagi." Zetsu asked, "Where do you want to transplant them?" "My back." After a pause, Obsidian continued, "I don't want to see these eyes." After thinking for a while, Zetsu said, "If it is not implanted in the eye socket and connected to the optic nerve, I am afraid there will be a certain rejection. The success rate of the transplant is not high." Obsidian said lightly, "It doesn't matter, there are enough Sharingan here. It doesn't matter how many times we fail." He knew very well that if it was not implanted in the eye socket, not only would the success rate of the transplant not be high, but the effect of activating Izanagi would also be greatly reduced. But this did not affect him much, because he had 2 Shinways. He could perfectly connect Izanagi. "I will arrange the surgery for you as soon as possible." As if thinking of something, Zetsu continued, "By the way, Nagato seems to be planning something recently." Obsidian frowned and asked, "What is he doing?" Zetsu spread his hands and said, "It seems like he wants to make my feel pain or something like that." Chapter 434. Because no one died. Although the attack on the patrol team caused a small commotion, it was quickly calmed down by the leaders of my village. In this regard, Kuroto can understand. Kakashi being attacked means that there are signs of Akatsuki's activities in the village. So at times like this, it's important to stay calm and not panic. Early the next morning, Hyojin left a shadow clone to replace him on duty, while his main body quietly left my village with Kimamaro's cell sample. Flying all the way, it didn't take long for him to arrive at the Sky Fortress located on the eastern sea of the Land of Fire. During this time, under the control of 3 generations of Kazekage puppets, the Sky Fortress has been following the thick clouds, drifting over the sea. Because it's hiding in the layers of clouds, even if a fishing boat happens to pass by, it won't be able to detect the Sky Fortress in the sky, so it's very hidden and safe. However, as the Sky Fortress had been hidden in the clouds for a long time, it had no choice but to keep the defensive barrier open to resist the corrosion of the structure of the Sky Fortress from the moisture in the clouds. Fortunately, the energy source of the Sky Fortress was Shino, the Morio's Jinchuriki. If it was any other energy source, it might not have been able to sustain such a high consumption. In the secret laboratory, Hyojin first checked the ghost sprout that he cultivated before. As expected, among the many embryos, there are 2 ghost sprout that successfully fused with Hyojin's cell and became ghost sprout that could be transplanted by Hyojin. Looking at the 2 gelatinous sprouts in the container, Hyojin found it hard to equate them with the thick gelatinous substance that gushed out of Hiriko's body during the Kekiai Genkai ceremony. "I must be careful." The young sprout in front of him seems harmless, but in fact, it's a monster that can fuse with flesh and blood. If he loses control of it, the consequences will be unimaginable, so Hyojin secretly warned himself. After some time of research and analysis, Kuroto had gained a deeper understanding of Hiriko's chimera technique. Hiriko's thought process can be clearly seen from the Kekiai Genkai fusion ritual he designed. He loosened the restrictions on the demon sprout in order to enhance the demon sprout's ability to fuse with flesh and blood, thus increasing the success rate of the ritual. Hiriko didn't seem to have done anything wrong in terms of design alone. After all, the success rate of the bloodline fusion ritual was the most important. If the ritual failed, he would die on the spot, and the consequences would be meaningless to him. However, Hiriko had obviously underestimated the hidden dangers brought about by relaxing the restrictions on the demon sprout. The Oni sprout's ability to fuse with flesh and blood is simply too strong, and the Oni sprout has its own consciousness. Not only was it able to repair Hiriko's body when he was injured and unconscious, it was also able to save his life. He can also forcibly seize control of Hiriko's body while he is still conscious, causing him to suffer from a backlash. Therefore, it is difficult for Hyojin to judge whether Hiriko is controlling the demon sprout at the moment or the demon sprout is controlling Hiriko. Rubbing his chin, Hyojin thought to himself, "It seems that I still need to find someone else to explore the way." Kuroto admired Hiriko's courage to cross the river by groping for stones, but on the road of scientific research, one can't make the slightest mistake. Once he makes a mistake, he will end up like Hiriko, unable to turn the situation around. Therefore, he needs some lab rats to explore the way for him. Who should I choose? Several candidates suddenly flashed in Hyojin's mind. Only Danzo, Orochimaru, and a few others have the ability and financial resources to invest in the development of the demon sprout. Due to their past friendship, Hyojin doesn't want to push Orochimaru to death. Not to mention, Orochimaru's talent in scientific research is extremely high. He should be able to see the hidden dangers of the demon sprout. I've decided on you, Danzo. After thinking for a while, Hyojin finally made his decision. Danzo is the kind of person who dares to make bold changes to his own body, and he is also one of the higher-ups of Mai. With power and influence, he is enough to support the development of the demon sprout. Most importantly, Danzo is ambitious. Others may be able to resist the temptation of the demon sprout technique and see the hidden dangers behind it, but Danzo is absolutely unable to resist this kind of temptation. After packing up the original demon sprout seedling and the demon sprout technique scroll, Hyojin thought to himself, "I'll sell these things for 50 million. It's not too expensive, right?" After dealing with the demon sprout technique, Hyojin calmed his thoughts and began the cell fusion experiment with the wind release clone. As usual, before the cell fusion, Kimimara's cells need to be filtered to remove the chakra attribute other than the wind attribute chakra. Also, because Kimimara's body was sealed by Orochimaru, Kimimara's cells need to be filtered to remove the chakra from the chakra. The filtering process lasted for 3 days. Out of nearly 200 sets of containers, 17 of them had survived the filtration phase of the centrifuge and still maintained strong cell activity. During the filtering process, Hyojin found that Kimimara's cells contain a large proportion of yang attribute chakra. This was in line with his previous guess. The Kagaya clan of the Corpse Bone Meridian probably inherited the Otsutsuki Himura's immortal body. However, compared to the Senpai clan that inherited the Otsutsuki Himura's immortal body, their strength was slightly weaker. Because of this, Kimimara's cells were so tough. After the filtering process was completed, the most difficult step was the cell fusion. When he was cloning the fire release clone, Hyojin was stuck in this step for a long time. After consuming a lot of money and manpower, he had to make a compromise and chose the only successful female clone. However, to Hyojin's surprise, the fusion of Kimimara's cells and his cells was unusually smooth. Out of the 17 sets, 10 sets completed the cell fusion. 10 sets of embryos that completed the cell fusion, with a little cultivation, could be cultivated into 10 clones. This was beyond Hyojin's expectation. The Hyuga clan and the Kagaya clan are really relatives. There is indeed a rumor in the family that the Hyuga clan and Kagaya clan have been friends for generations, but the relationship between the two clans is completely in the hands of the main family. As a member of the branch family, Hyojin is not too clear about this. Because of the several shinobi wars, the Hyuga clan and Kagaya clan belong to the Mai clan and the Mist Village respectively, so the relationship between the two clans was gradually severed. But now it seems that the possibility of the Hyuga clan and the Kagaya clan being relatives is very high. Chapter 435. Don't just rely on your eyes. Organs like your ears and nose can also help you sense your surroundings. Don't hesitate. You'll lose if you do. Is this all you've got? Punches like this won't kill you. You have to learn to play to your strengths. After using sand to protect your vital parts, trading blows with blows is also a good tactic, Hyojin instructed Gaara, as he practiced with him. From Hyojin's point of view, he did not need to spend too much effort to learn those high-level ninjutsu when he was too young. What he really needed to work hard on was the training of his physical skills and the control of his chakra. Physical skills training could not only train a ninja's physique and willpower, but it could also improve a ninja's insight and judgment between life and death. These were exactly what experts needed the most in a duel. Therefore, Hyojin did not ask Gaara to spend a lot of time practicing how to control the sand to attack. Instead, he only asked him to maintain a small amount of sand control. The amount of sand control was never the key. The key was the precision and speed of the control. As for the amount, when Gaara grew up and could control a guardian crane in his body, he would be able to control as much sand as he wanted with his chakra. There was no shortcut to improve the precision and speed of sand control. The only way was to improve it bit by bit through long periods of practice. Not only could this kind of practice hone his chakra's precision control, but it could also allow his body to slowly adapt to sand control. Over time, some sand control techniques that required concentration would become subconscious movements of his body. He would not need to exert much strength, as his body would be able to perform them naturally. Bang! Amidst the muffled sound, Hyojin's fist hit the sand wall that protected Gaara's chest again. After retreating, Hyojin smiled and said, "Very good. Your sand control speed is obviously faster than before." Huff, huff, the young Gaara panted violently. His chest heaved up and down like a bellows, but his young face was full of joy. It was as if the fatigue of his body was nothing compared to Hyojin's praise. Seeing this, Hyojin sighed to himself. Sigh. He's also a child who lacks love. After sighing, he shifted his gaze to the ball of fine sand surrounding Gaara. As a matter of fact, even if Gaara didn't control the sand around him that contained his mother's chakra would automatically protect him from harm. But this kind of protection is limited to the level of Genin and Chunin. Once Gaara encounters a Jonin or an elite Jonin-level enemy, the speed at which the sand automatically protects itself will not be able to keep up. During the Chunin exam in the original timeline, after the Genin, Xiaoli removed the lead that bound her legs. Her attack speed faintly exceeded the speed of Gaara's sand's automatic protection. When Xiaoli activated the 8 Inner Gates Forbidden technique, her attack speed obviously surpassed the speed of Gaara's sand's automatic protection, and she could easily hit Gaara. Therefore, relying on the sand's automatic protection, Gaara might be able to run amok at the level of Genin and Chunin. However, if he encountered an expert whose attack speed surpassed the speed of the sand's automatic protection, he would become very passive, just like during the Chunin exam in the original timeline. He could only look around blankly and get hit like a fool. After catching his breath, Gaara said respectfully, "Sir, you're right. After reducing the amount of sand control, it's much easier to control the sand than before." Hyojin nodded and said, "I've temporarily sealed the guardian crane in your body. So with your current chakra's amount, controlling too much sand won't play the role of training and will only add to your burden. Moreover, as long as you control it properly, even a small ball of sand will be enough to help you resist the vast majority of attacks." Gaara replied in a well-behaved manner, "I understand." Hyojin said again, "Remember, whether it's eating or resting, you must always maintain control of the sand. Let your body slowly form a habit, and treat the sand as a part of your body." Hee, Gaara, you can do it." At this time, a little girl's cheer came from the side. Hyojin's face sank when he heard this, and he moved his eyes to the side of the field. He had to admit that he underestimated the physique of the Uzumaki clan. Originally, he thought that Xiang Lin had suffered too much in the grass village. She was small and skinny, so he didn't let her participate in any ninja training, nor did he restrict her diet. But he didn't think that Xiang Lin, as an Uzumaki clan member, had amazing resilience. In just 1 or 2 months, she turned from a skinny little girl to a chubby little girl. Hyojin said with a straight face, "Xiang Lin, it's your turn." Xiang Lin, who was holding a wheat cake, opened her mouth in shock, and the wheat cake crumbs fell to the ground. "What are you doing? Come here." With a light snort, Hyojin then said sternly, "From today on, You also have to accept ninja training. If you don't pass, you will have to starve. Hearing this, Xianglin hurriedly hid the remaining half of the wheat cake in her hand into her small bag, and then walked over with a pout. Being hungry would remind her of her time in Kusinabu village, and it was the most unbearable thing for her. Hyojin stared at little Xianglin and asked, "Do you know how to extract chakra?" Xianglin nodded. "Very good." After a pause, Hyojin said, "From now on, your daily course will be the same as mine, also physical training plus chakra control training." Xianglin quickly asked, "Do I also have to practice sand control?" Hyojin shook his head and said, "No, you have to practice the sealing technique." Xianglin was a talented child in the Maelstrom clan, so as long as she was carefully guided, her future achievements would be limitless. After guiding Xianglin on some key points of physical training, Hyojin handed Xianglin over to Gaara. Although Gaara's physical skills were not too outstanding, it was more than enough to guide Xianglin, who was a blank piece of paper. Moreover, communicating with peers was sometimes more efficient than communicating with teachers and elders. Caw. After dealing with the two little guys, Hyojin was about to return to the laboratory when a faint crow's cry came from outside. Walking to the outer platform of the Sky Fortress, Hyojin opened a small area of the barrier and let a ninja crow in. There was a small storage scroll tied to the ninja crow's leg. After Hyojin opened the scroll, he gently pressed it with his thumb. Boom! Suddenly, a white smoke filled the air, and several ancient scrolls appeared on the storage scroll, plus a letter with ink that was still wet. Chapter 436. This crow was specially sent by Hyojin to collect Kimamaro's cells that night. Now that the 4 generations Mizuki Jigura has become his subordinate, then the Mist Village's database is also Amatsukumi's database. And after the Mist Village destroyed the Kagaya clan, they seized a large number of ancient books. And these ancient books are the best historical materials to explore the origin of the Kagaya clan. Perhaps you can find some information about the Hyuga clan from them. Returning to the laboratory, Suijin temporarily put aside the ancient scroll and opened the letter that was still wet with ink. This letter was written by Yagura. In a letter, he mentioned that the Mist Village recently received a secret invitation from Mai, inviting him as the Mizukage to my village to hold a new round of the Gakage meeting. The purpose of Yagura writing this letter is to ask Hyojin whether he wants to participate in the secret Gakage meeting held in my village or not. Putting down the letter, Hyojin thought to himself, when did the village send such an invitation? How come I didn't even get wind of it? Immediately, Kuroto was relieved. With the failure of the joint raid on the Akatsuki organization by Mai, Kyumo, and Sankrypsis, as well as the exposure of the fact that the 4 generations Mizukage was secretly controlled by the Akatsuki organization, the fact that the Akatsuki organization has the ability to threaten the Kaga-level shinobi is no longer rare in the shinobi world. Therefore, for the sake of safety, the Gakage meeting that could be held openly in the past can only be held in secret. Otherwise, if the Akatsuki organization notices the whereabouts of the Kage, then the Kages who leave the village are likely to become the targets of the Akatsuki organization. It seems that the 3 generations haven't been idle either. The corner of Hyojin's mouth rose, and he secretly sighed. The 3 generations first won over the surrounding small shinobi villages, such as Kusanagi Village, Takanobi Village, and Sound Village, and through a grand alliance ceremony. All of them were tied to the chariot of Mai. Moreover, the pressure on the border of the Land of Fire was reduced, so that Mai could retract his power and clench his fingers into a fist. Then, the 3 generations conspired to hold a new round of the Gakage meeting. Even Kuroto couldn't help but praise Sandaime-sama for grasping the perfect timing this time. First of all, Sunagakure has already formed an alliance with Konoha, so they will definitely support Konoha in holding the Gakage summit, and the Kazekage will definitely attend. Kyumo's Jinchuriki is still in the hands of the Akatsuki organization, and whether he is alive or not is still unknown. In the mist, the probability is that the Kage-level Jinchuriki is very high. Kageki organizations, Koso, no clan organizations, Jinchuriki organizations, Ryoshi organization. 4 of the village of the clan meeting, and even if the rock village, if dozen organizations, if Kue, Kizi Show organization, and the village Kami organization. There's no doubt that from this series of arrangements alone, it can be seen that the 3 generations have realized that no village is the Akatsuki organization's opponent in a one-on-one fight, so they began to secretly weave a big net for the Akatsuki organization, waiting for the Akatsuki organization to drill into it. This time, if it weren't for the fact that the Mizukage himself is Hyojin's subordinate, and even the Umbu squad leader Hyojin would have been kept in the dark by the 3 generations, it can be seen that this Gakage meeting is very secretive. Without much hesitation, Hyojin wrote the word approved on the letter, then sealed the letter in a small storage scroll, tied it to the leg of the Kami crow, and sent it away. For the 3 generations plan, Kuroto is naturally happy to see it come to fruition. Next, Hyojin began to read the ancient books of the Kagaya clan that were sent by Yagura. Not only did these ancient scrolls contain the genealogy of the Splendor Knight clan's 1,000 years of history, there were also secret scrolls that recorded the Splendor Knight clan's various secret techniques and forbidden techniques. The secret scroll even contained the Splendor Knight clan's thousands of years of research on the corpse bone bloodline. Blood-changing ritual. Soon, the content of one of the pages attracted Hyojin's attention. According to the Kagaya clan's nearly 1,000 years of research, they found that the higher the talent, the more thoroughly the corpse bone bloodline was excavated, the shorter the lifespan. And after dissecting the corpses of the Kagaya clan, they were surprised to find that there was a toxin-like substance that was rooted in the corpse bone bloodline. So the higher the talent, the more thoroughly the corpse bone bloodline was excavated, the shorter the lifespan. The corpse bone vein was the foundation of the Kwai Knight clan's fame, and it was what they relied on to dominate during the chaotic Warring States period. Therefore, the higher-ups of the Kwai Knight clan immediately sealed off this discovery and began to research it in secret. In order to break this curse that threatened the continuation of the family, the higher-ups of the Splendor Knight clan conducted countless inhumane human experiments. After sacrificing a large number of innocent clansmen, they finally discovered that this poison that was rooted in the corpse bone veins mainly resided in the human body's blood system. As long as the blood was changed, the poison's harm to the body would be greatly reduced. Afterward, the Kagaya clan also found a kind of herb. If this herb was refined into a pill and used together with a blood-changing ritual, it could completely eliminate the toxins. So it's not like Kimimaro has the blood inheritance disease, but the entire Kagaya clan has it. After understanding this, Kuroto frowned, got up, and went to the breeding room. In the breeding room, there were 2 large nutrition tanks, each with a clone body. Although there are as many as 10 embryos that have completed cell fusion, with Kuroto's current financial resources, it is impossible for him to cultivate all of them at once, so he can only choose 2 embryos with the strongest activity and cultivate them first. Even if he used the Tenseigan chakra, it would take more than a month to cultivate the embryos. Therefore, the wind release clone in the nutrition tank was only the size of a palm. Looking at the 2 clones, Hyojin thought, if the entire Kagaya clan is affected by this blood inheritance disease, then my wind release clone might not be able to escape. The wind release clone cells were collected from Kimimaro. At the time of the collection, Kimimaro was already suffering from the blood inheritance disease, so his cells should contain the toxins. According to the secret scroll, only blood changing could remove the toxins. However, not everyone's blood could be used. It had to be from the same clan, and it had to be the same clan that didn't have the blood inheritance disease. In other words, it had to be the Kagaya clan that hadn't awakened the corpse bone bloodline, or the Kagaya clan that had gone through the blood-changing ritual and no longer had toxins in their bodies. But now that the Kagaya clan was exterminated, this kind of people had already disappeared. While thinking about how to get rid of the Kagaya clan's blood inheritance disease, a thought suddenly flashed in Hyojin's mind. Why does the Kagaya clan's corpse bone bloodline have a toxin that even the Kagaya clan can't resist? Chapter 437. For Hyojin, who had concocted compound toxins, he was no stranger to biological toxins or mineral toxins. Therefore, he knew very well that in the natural world, plants and animals that carried toxins were often immune to their own toxins and would not be harmed by their own toxins. This was not something miraculous. It was merely because the animals and plants that could not do this had long gone extinct and disappeared in the vast history, becoming a speck of dust in the evolution of animals and plants. This was the survival of the fittest. However, the fact that the Kagaya clan was able to survive for thousands of years in the shinobi world shows that the toxin rooted in the corpse bone vein does not directly affect the inheritance of the Kagaya clan to a certain extent. It only limits the upper limit of the Kagaya clan's strength and limits the development of the corpse bone vein. And this characteristic reminded Hyojin of the Uchiha clan's Manjikyu Sharingan. But because the bloodline of the Sage of Six Paths has gradually thinned over thousands of years of reproduction, resulting in a single Uchiha clansman being unable to support the huge consumption of the Manjikyu Sharingan, making the awakening of the Manjikyu Sharingan a curse that will inevitably lead to blindness. The Uchiha clan had been troubled by this problem for a long time, but they finally found a solution. That is, by fusing with the Manjikyu Sharingan of a blood relative, he can permanently enhance his pupillary powers, solving the fundamental problem of his own Manjikyu Sharingan, allowing his Manjikyu Sharingan to evolve into an eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that will never go blind. Could it be that the Splendor Knight clan's immortal bloodline is thin due to 1,000 years of reproduction, so they can't support an overly powerful bloodline limit? After this thought appeared in his mind, Hyojin quickly realized that if this guess was correct, then the mysterious substance that was rooted in the corpse bone vein was not a simple poison. Hyojin had always been a man of action. After he had his speculations, he did not continue to make wild guesses. Instead, he began to experiment. Now that he knew that this toxin was hidden in the blood of the Kagaya clan, Suijin took out the blood sample collected from Kimimaro and tried to extract the toxin to study what kind of substance it was. At first, the extraction process was very smooth. Hyojin quickly found the poison in Kimimaro's blood. He used the simplest method to extract the poison. However, in the process of gradual purification, Hyojin encountered a huge problem. He was surprised to find out that once the toxin in Kimimaro's blood reached a certain level of purity, there was no container in his laboratory that could contain it. Even the strengthened experimental containers would immediately collapse and turn into ashes after coming in contact with the toxin. Hyojin fell into an awkward situation where there was no container that could contain the toxin so that he could continue purifying it. This phenomenon made Hyojin think of a technique, and that was Kagaya's shared death gray bones. Kagaya's shared death gray bones had the property of dying upon contact. The victim's body would collapse and scatter with the wind like withered leaves, turning into a pile of ashes. It seems that the Kagaya clan's corpse bone vein is related to Kagaya's shared death gray bones. Hyojin's face was solemn, and his eyes flashed. The shared death gray bones that Kagaya used was a bone blade that came out of her body. In other words, Kagaya was immune to the shared death gray bones. However, Kagaya was the ancestor of Chakra, a Kekkei net that combined the 7 elements of Yin, Yang, and 5 elements. She was the first undying expert in the ninja world. Her body was immune to the shared death gray bones, but that didn't mean that her descendants had the same ability. If the corpse bone vein was really a weakened version of the shared death gray bones, then Hyojin couldn't help but sigh at the Kagaya clan's bad luck. Kagaya didn't inherit a lot of powerful abilities, but she inherited the most dangerous ability of Kagaya. Because the bloodline was diluted, the ability was weakened. Although the Uchiha clan couldn't maintain the Manjikyu Sharingan, they would at most lose their sight. But if the Kagaya clan overdeveloped the corpse bone vein and let it get close to the shared death gray bones, they would gradually obtain the property of shared death gray bones. The first to die would naturally be the Kagaya clan, who couldn't bear the property of shared death gray bones. One must know that although the Kagaya clan inherited the sage body of Hamura of Otsutsuki, and their body contains part of the yang attribute chakra, in terms of physique alone, they may be second only to the Senju clan and the Uzumaki clan. However, the property of shared death gray bones is too overbearing. Even a six-path shinobi who has fused the yin release and yang release would find it difficult to be immune to it, not to mention the Kagaya clan who only have the yang release. After speculating this, Hyojin keenly discovered that the blood-changing ritual used by the Kagaya clan to solve the Kekii disease was not a true cure, but a kind of artificial weakening of the corpse bone vein. Through the use of blood-changing and elixir, the shared death gray bones property was removed from the corpse bone vein in order to prolong their life. This is completely incomparable to the Uchiha clan's method of obtaining the eternal pupil power by fusing the Manjikyu Sharingan. The Uchiha clan has really found a way to solve the problem, while the Kagaya clan has only found a way to prolong their existence. Of course, this can't be blamed on the incompetence of the Kagaya clan, because there is only one way to really solve their Kekii disease, and that is to become a Kekii net like Kagaya, which combines the yin-yang 5 elements and the 7 attributes of chakra, making their body strong enough to withstand the shared death gray bones property. But becoming a Kekii net is easier said than done. Not to mention a Kekii net that combines 7 attributes. There are not many people in the shinobi world who can complete the fusion of yin and yang attributes and obtain the power of Jengo. Except for Otsutsuki, the first person to achieve this is Madara Uchiha, who transplanted the Hashirama cells to obtain the Rinnegan. Therefore, it is not easy for the Kagaya clan's ancestors to find a way to change their blood and survive. After a slight sigh of relief, Hyojin secretly thought, "It seems that I can't use the blood-changing ritual. This so-called blood-changing ritual is actually a weakening, not a cure." Chapter 438. No wonder even Orochimaru couldn't save Kimimaro. In the original world, Orochimaru didn't try to save Kimimaro, but even with his medical skills and biotechnology, he couldn't do anything about Kimimaro's blood disease. In fact, this blood disease of the Kagaya clan is a kind of genius disease. The more talented the clansmen are, the earlier they die. For someone as talented as Kimimaro, in the original world, he didn't even survive until he got married and had children, leaving behind only 1 or 2 bloodlines before he died. In the next few days, Hyojin received Itachi's combat power enhancement plan through the Ninja Crow, assuming that Amatsukumi's organization is completely destroyed. After crossing out some parts of the plan related to pupillary and taijutsu exercises, Suijin drew a few big circles one after another, circling several places in the plan. These places, without exception, are the settlements of the Uchiha clan during the Warring States period. If these places are connected in a line, one can clearly see the migration route of the Uchiha clan in the past 1,000 years. It seems that Itachi wants to explore these ruins of the Uchiha Warring States period to enhance his understanding of the Sharingan and improve his strength in other aspects. Itachi's choice is understandable. When Uchiha Madara left, he took away too many precious ancient books of the Uchiha clan. If he wants to further understand the Sharingan and the Uchiha clan, he can only explore these ruins of the Uchiha clan during the Warring States period. Itachi, in the original world, should have done similar things. Could it be that he found the clues of the Tenseigan and Yada no Kagami when he explored these ruins? Itachi died at the age of 21 in the original world, so the trajectory of his life is very simple. He awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan at the age of 11 or 12, exterminated the clan at the age of 13, betrayed the village, and died in a battle with Sasuke at the age of 21. The Tenseigan and Yada no Kagami are most likely Chakra's divine artifacts, and they need a special technique like Susanoo to be used. Therefore, the time when Itachi obtained the Tenseigan and Yada no Kagami was probably the time when he awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan at the age of 11 or 12, and before he died at the age of 21. Rubbing his chin, Kuroto said, "Zetsu was watching the battle between Itachi and Sasuke, and when he saw Itachi use the two artifacts, he was obviously surprised, which means that Itachi didn't get the clue of the two artifact from the Akatsuki. Excluding the possibility of the Sage of Six Paths intervening, the place where Itachi got the clue of the two artifacts is probably one of the many Uchiha ruins. Which one could it be? In the past 1,000 years, the Uchiha clan has migrated many times, and there are more than a dozen ruins in the ruins. If you don't personally go there, just by looking at the names of these ruins, it's impossible to distinguish which ruins may have clues to the divine artifact. After thinking for a long time, Hyojin decided to put this matter aside for now. After all, Jishue's body was still recovering, and she needed Itachi's protection. Itachi couldn't leave at all. Moreover, he also had to pay attention to the cultivation of the wind release clone, so he couldn't get away from it. Moreover, Itachi could find the clues of the divine artifacts in these ruins, but it didn't mean that others could. Therefore, the safest way was to let Itachi go there himself. Therefore, Hyojin decided to wait for Jishue's body to recover before letting Jishue and Itachi go there together to investigate the clues of the Sword of 10 Punches. If the two of them went there together, as long as they didn't bump into Nagato or the Obsidian, they wouldn't be in any danger. For the next month, Hyojin spent his time cultivating the wind release clone and guiding Iero and Xianglin. Iero was talented to begin with, and he was very hardworking. When he was serious, he didn't look like a 7-year-old kid at all. Therefore, his improvement was very obvious. Whether it was his physical skills or his sand control, he was like a different person from a month ago. According to Hyojin's estimation, Iero's physical skills were probably on par with Sasuke's. If he added his sand control ability, he should be able to defeat Sasuke. In comparison, although Xianglin's physical skills had improved, it wasn't as obvious as Iero's. Xianglin lacked ruthlessness, and her movements were too sloppy during physical skills battles. Iero couldn't bear to hurt her, so he couldn't correct this bad habit of hers. Fortunately, the high-intensity body technique training stopped her from getting fatter and prevented her from developing horizontally. As for the cultivation of sealing techniques, Hyojin didn't need to worry too much. She could basically learn some basic sealing techniques and Madra techniques as soon as he taught her. If it weren't for the fact that she was still young and that chakra wasn't enough, she could have tried to cast some simple sealing techniques. Hyojin was very attentive in guiding these two kids. He basically didn't hold anything back. In addition to training, Hyojin would occasionally care about them. He would bring them to play on the sea or have a picnic on an uninhabited island. These were normal things for ordinary kids, but for Iero and Xianglin, they were happy experiences that they had never experienced before. Therefore, the two kids trusted and relied on Hyojin more and more. In terms of experiments, under Hyojin's continuous Tenseigan chakra, the two wind release clones in the large nutrition tank had successfully developed after more than a month of cultivation. Looking at the two wind-type clones soaked in the nutrient solution, Suijin couldn't help but feel a sense of surrealism in his heart. Perhaps the difficulty of creating the fire release clones left a deep impression on him, causing him to feel that the cloning of the wind release clones was too smooth. From the beginning to the end, it was completed in less than 2 months. After calming himself down, he observed the two wind release clones. The two wind release clones looked very similar, and he could see his own reflection in their appearance. However, their temperament was colder, and there was a hint of killing intent between their eyebrows. They weren't as gentle as his appearance. In addition, the hair color of the two wind release clones wasn't black like Hyojin's hair, but gray like Kimimara's hair. His grayish-white hair, coupled with his cold face, gave off a very strange feeling. It was a kind of aggressive, crazy, and somewhat arrogant temperament. After labeling the two wind release clones as Type A and Type B, he carefully compared the difference between the two clones. After comparing the two clones, Hyojin gradually frowned. He noticed that there was an inconspicuous bulge between the eyebrows of the Type A clone. Is this a bump or a tumor? After a pause, Hyojin mumbled, or is it a horn? Chapter 439. Hyojin is sure that at least yesterday, there was no such inconspicuous bulge between the eyebrows of this type, a wind-release clone. Under suspicion, he slowly closed his eyes and then suddenly opened his eyes. His originally white eyes instantly became bright like the stars, and there was a hidden divine light hidden in the Tenseigan. And in the vision of the Tenseigan, the Type A wind-release clone's body immediately became visible. It's really a bone. After confirming that the bulge between the eyebrows of the Type A wind-release clone is really a small piece of bone under the skin and not some other soft tissue, Hyojin's face became even more doubtful. Horns on the forehead, that is the dominant characteristic of the Otsutsuki clan. As far as Hyojin knows, in addition to the Otsutsuki clan, it seems that only the Golden Horn and the Silver Horn brothers of the Cloud Village have a pair of horns on their head. Yes, it is the overbearing brothers who killed the second-generation Lei Ying and the second-generation Naruto. It is said that the brothers also have the bloodline of the Sage of Six Paths. In the battle with the Nine Tails, they were swallowed by the Nine Tails. As a result, the two of them relied on the flesh and blood of the Nine Tails to make the Nine Tails a berserk beast unable to defeat them. In the end, the two of them had no choice but to spit out the two brothers. And this pair of brothers also swallowed the flesh and blood of the Nine Tails and obtained the chakra of the Nine Tails. This kind of story, even in the myths and legends before the Warring States period, is legendary enough, but it really happened, and it happened a few decades ago. In addition, even the last descendant of the Otsutsuki Himura on the moon, Otsutsuki Samurai, has no horns on his forehead under normal circumstances. Only when he enters the Tenseigan chakra mode will a single horn grow on his forehead. As for Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Obsidian, they all grew horns after becoming Jubi's Jinchuriki, and Hyojin himself, even in the Tenseigan chakra mode, has no horns on his forehead. It seems like the Type A clones underwent a mutation during their development, causing their bodies to show the same atavism as the Goldhorn and Silverhorn brothers. Because whether it is the Hyuga clan or the Kagaya clan, the origin of their bloodline is the ancestor of the Chakra clan, Otsutsuki Kagaya, so the phenomenon of atavism is not a bad thing, but it means that this Type A wind-release clone body is likely to have gained additional bloodline power due to the mutation. Soon, Hyojin took out the Type A wind escape clone body from the nutrition tank and placed it on the experiment table. After recording the basic physical data of the Type A wind-release clone body, Kuroto didn't hesitate and immediately used the Tenseigan's soul descent technique and put his soul into the Type A wind-release clone body. Hyojin, who had changed his body, suddenly sat up on the test bench. This feeling. As he moved his limbs, he felt the flow of chakra in his body. He didn't know why, but this clone body gave him a very strange feeling. It was as if it had been developed before, and there was almost no difficulty in controlling it. It was even smoother than the water release clone and fire release clone that he had been working on for a long time. The compatibility between my spirit body and this clone body is so high. Hyojin was shocked. Such a change was out of his expectation. According to the previous experience of developing the water escape clone and the fire escape clone, it was essential for the spirit body and the clone to get used to each other. Moreover, there was no shortcut. It could only be used over a long period of time and immersed in intense battles. However, this Type A wind-release clone body is very different. It seems to be custom-made for Hyojin's spirit body. The control is as smooth as his Yin release. Could it be because of the mutation? Temporarily suppressing the doubts in his mind, Hyojin started to check every part of the Type A wind-release clone body. Byakugan open. With the activation of the Byakugan, Hyojin found that after the Byakugan on the Type A wind-release clone body fused with his own spirit body, the Byakugan on the Type A wind-release clone body had excellent vision. This is a high-purity Byakugan. Hyojin was not a person without experience, so he quickly identified the Byakugan on the Type A wind-release clone body. Once his spirit body fused with the Byakugan, the purity of the Byakugan would instantly surpass the Hyuga clan's Byakugan. At the same time, The moment he activated the Byakugan and mobilized the chakra, he also found that the chakra amount in the Type A wind release clone body was also far beyond his expectations. It was almost close to the level of his Ein release clone body. The data of this clone body is too exaggerated. Did I pick up a treasure? Or is every wind release clone body this good? Thinking about this, Hyojin's gaze subconsciously shifted to the Type B wind release clone body in the other nutrition tank. Therefore, he took out the Type B wind release clone body from the nutrition tank and used the soul descend technique to send his spirit body into the Type B wind release clone body. After a round of inspection, Hyojin found that the Type B wind release clone body was much more normal. Although the Type B wind release clone body was also good, be it the compatibility with Hyojin's spirit body, the purity of the Byakugan, or the chakra amount in the body, they were far inferior to the Type A wind release clone body. After carefully comparing the data of the two wind release clones, Hyojin mumbled, "As expected, it's because of the sudden change after using the soul descend technique to send his spirit body into the Type A wind release clone body." Hyojin casually picked up the secret scroll that recorded the various secret techniques of the Kagaya clan and slowly walked to the training field. After opening the secret scroll, Hyojin began to read it seriously. The Kagaya clan's physical techniques were all ninja techniques that were compatible with the corpse bone bloodline limit. Since the Kagaya clan's main attribute was almost all the wind attribute, the Kagaya clan's members had outstanding speed and explosive power. Even a person with mediocre talent would be able to become a qualified ninja as long as they received proper ninja training. Therefore, almost every member of the Kagaya clan was good at fighting, and the best among them were all battle maniacs. After studying for a long time, Hyojin put the secret scroll aside and pointed at a target far away with his right hand and shouted, "Secret technique, 10-finger piercing bullets." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As soon as Hyojin's voice fell, the fingertips of his right hand shot out 5 bone bullets that looked like bullets. Accompanied by a sharp whistling sound, they shot towards the target far away. In an instant, the sturdy target was shot into pieces. Not only that, after the bone bullets shot through the target, they did not lose their momentum and continued to hit the wall behind the target, creating a few holes in the wall that was reinforced by the sealing technique. Ugh! Looking at the scattered pieces of the target and the holes on the wall, Hyojin was dumbfounded. At first, he just wanted to try and see if he could successfully perform the corpse bone bloodline. He did not expect the result to be like this. Chapter 440. Recalling the smooth release of the bone vein secret jutsu just now, Hyojin's eyes drooped, and he muttered to himself, "Is this what geniuses are like?" The 10-finger piercing bullets just now didn't feel awkward at all. It was like the body's instinct. This made Hyojin, who has ordinary talent and has always needed to practice hard to be proficient in ninjutsu, very uncomfortable. Converging his divergent thoughts, Hyojin slowly walked to the center of the practice field. Kuroto snapped his fingers. Soon, several puppets came out of the storage room. These puppets were obtained by Hyojin through various channels before. Hyojin placed them in the practice field and gave them a certain degree of autonomy through the Tenseigan chakra, letting them serve as training objects. Gurgle, gurgle with the shaking of their bodies. Sharp blades with cold light popped out of the limbs of these puppets, and immediately they attack Hyojin in the field in a variety of strange postures. Not only did Hyojin not activate the Byakugan, but he also closed his eyes and lowered his center of gravity slightly. Feeling the changes in the air around him and listening to the various sound from far to near, Hyojin secretly said in his heart, "I feel it." Whoosh! In an instant, when the puppets attacked in front of him, Hyojin's figure turned into an afterimage. This afterimage is like a ghost, wandering among the puppets, avoiding the puppets' attacks again and again, making the scene that should be extremely thrilling inexplicably give people a sense of calmness, as if it was just a game. This is the feeling. In the flashing and moving, Hyojin had a realization in his heart. What he is now using is the secret technique recorded in the Kagaya clan's secret scroll, Dance of the Willow. Dance of the Willow is a relatively high-end secret technique among the many secret techniques of the Kagaya clan. It responds to the enemy's attack by perceiving the surrounding air and judging the sound. It is a high-level ninjutsu that can be performed instinctively even without eyes. Clang, clang, clang suddenly. A series of metal clanging sounds echoed throughout the training field. Hyojin, who was in the middle of the battlefield, stopped moving. The slender bone blades that extended from his palms, elbows, and shoulder blades also slowly retracted back into his body. Just a moment ago, he launched the dance of the willow's bone blade attack. In just a few breaths of time, the puppets surrounding him were cut into pieces by the bone blade. Not only the puppet itself, but the metal swords and sabers that the puppet was equipped with were also shattered by the bone blades. Squatting on the ground, Hyojin examined the sword fragments scattered on the ground. He found that the edges of the fragments were very neat, as if they had been cut by a sharper blade. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin shook his right hand, and a bone spear extended from the palm of his right hand. Then he took out a kunai from the ninja bag on his waist. Clang, the bone spear collided with the kunai. Accompanied by a sharp sound, the kunai that was forged from fine steel was instantly cut in half by the bone spear. So sharp, Hyojin didn't rejoice. Instead, a trace of worry appeared in his heart. As one of the candidates for the Wind-type clone, Suijin has high expectations for this clone, and for this reason, he doesn't need the clone to be too strong in the aspect of bone vein, because the stronger the bone vein is, the more severe the Kekii disease will be. What he really needs is the clone's ability to develop the wind release to achieve a balance between the various attributes of the clones. After taking a deep breath, Hyojin decided to use the ability of the bone vein less in the future. Then, he started to ponder about the wind attribute Kekii limit. There are many Kekii limit related to the wind attribute in the shinobi world, such as ice release, burning release, dust release, and so on, but there aren't many Kekii limit based on the wind attribute. The magnetic release Kekii limit, which has gradually become the standard for the Kazekage of the Sand Crypsis village, is one of them. The magnetic release Kekii limit mainly has the wind attribute, and the lightning attribute is the secondary attribute. Through the wind attribute chakra, the lightning attribute chakra can be stimulated by the lightning attribute chakra, which is in an extremely active state to control metals. And according to the chakra attribute of different ninjas, the nature of the magnetic release will also be slightly different. For example, the magnetic release of the 3 generations of Kazekage can control ordinary iron sand, while the magnetic release of the 4 generations of Kazekage can control the very rare gold sand. Hyojin has already checked the chakra attribute of this type, a wind clone. It is mainly of the wind attribute, but it also has the yin attribute, yang attribute, lightning attribute, earth attribute, and water attribute. The only thing it lacks is the fire attribute. Therefore, this type, a wind escape clone, could try to cultivate the magnetic escape. And because he has owned the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets for a long time, Hyojin's understanding of the magnetic release is probably second only to the current 4 generations of Kazekage. Because when he first mastered the soul descent technique, he has possessed the bodies of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets many times and personally experienced the feeling of using the magnetic release. He is very clear about the principle of how to use the wind attribute chakra to stimulate the lightning attribute chakra, and how to keep the lightning attribute chakra in a high-frequency vibration state to generate the magnetic force. Not long after, Hyojin summoned the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets to the practice field. After borrowing some iron sand from the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets, he began to try to practice the magnetic release. For someone who has practiced ice release and fire release, the fusion of 2 different chakra attributes is not too difficult. But magnetic release is different from ice release and fire release. So, it is not too difficult for him to fuse 2 different chakra attributes together. It is just that magnetic release is different from ice and fire release. The ice release and the flame release are about fusing different attributes of chakra together to produce a change in nature. So the key to them is fusion. The magnetic release is different. Simply fusing the wind attribute chakra and the lightning attribute chakra will not be able to practice the magnetic release. The key to the magnetic release is not fusion, but stimulation. If you don't know this trick, no matter how high your talent is, no matter how much chakra you have, you still won't be able to practice the magnetic release. However, this trick may be a big secret for others, but for Hyojin, who has simultaneously possessed the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets and the soul descent technique, it is knowledge that he has already mastered long ago. Recalling the feeling of using the magnetic release when he possessed the bodies of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets, Hyojin closed his eyes and concentrated on controlling the wind attribute chakra in his body, letting the wind attribute chakra tease the lightning attribute chakra little by little, making the lightning attribute chakra more and more active. Chapter 441. As Hyojin became more and more focused on controlling the wind attribute chakra to provoke the thunder attribute chakra, he soon immersed himself in this kind of single-minded practice, leaving everything around him behind. There is no doubt that the nature fusion of the magnetic release was a great test of the ninja's control over the chakra. This was because to maintain the effect of the magnetic release, one must constantly control the wind attribute chakra to stimulate the thunder attribute chakra, turning the control of the wind attribute chakra into an instinct of the body. This was different from the ninjutsu that needed to be performed by hand seals. The hand seal ninjutsu often only needed the ninja to control the chakra to complete the hand seals in a short period of time, and then it could be performed smoothly. Therefore, many people could do it. However, to perform the magnetic release, the ninja needed to maintain the state of performing the technique and continuously control the chakra, which was equivalent to a ninja constantly making hand seals. Therefore, maintaining the magnetic release was both a kind of training and a burden for the ninja. This was also why the Sand Crypsis village had explored the method of practicing the magnetic release, but only the 3 generations of Kazekage and the 4 generations of Kazekage had truly mastered the magnetic release. In the practice field, as Hyojin gradually immersed himself in it, the lump of iron sand in front of him was gradually affected. More and more black iron sand particles were attracted by the magnetic force and floated in the air. It was not until a strong sense of hunger came from his stomach that Hyojin slowly came to his senses and withdrew from this state of immersion. Clatter. As soon as Hyojin withdrew from the state of cultivation, the iron sand floating in front of him fell to the ground. Hearing the sound of iron sand falling to the ground, Hyojin immediately woke up with a start. He suddenly opened his eyes and muttered, "It can't be. It only took one try, and he succeeded?" Recollecting his thoughts, Hyojin asked the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets standing on the side. Only then did he know that a full 5 hours had passed since he began to try to practice the magnetic release. So much time has passed without me noticing. No wonder I'm so hungry. Hyojin immediately got up and looked for some food to fill his stomach as he pondered. With just one attempt, he had produced a slight magnetic force and affected the iron sand, causing the iron sand to float. Such a remarkable cultivation effect made him extremely happy. He felt that the reason why it was so effective was closely related to this clone. It seems like this clone has a high affinity with chakra. Apart from having a low affinity with fire chakra, Clone A has a very high affinity with other chakra attributes, especially the wind chakra, which is the main chakra attribute. Clone A has a very high affinity with all other chakra attributes, especially the wind chakra. Moreover, Hyojin himself was very clear about the principle of the magnetic release. Moreover, he had personally experienced using the magnetic release on the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets many times. That was why the effect of his cultivation was so remarkable. In addition, these iron sand borrowed from the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets have been affected by the magnetic release chakra for many years. Therefore, they were very sensitive to the magnetic release. Even if there was only a slight magnetic force, they would still respond. With all these factors combined, Hyojin was able to achieve such an excellent result when he used the clone A to practice the magnetic release for the first time. 3 days later, Hyojin, who was controlling the clone A of wind release, stood calmly in the middle of the practice field. Opposite him were the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. The 2 of them were quietly facing each other in the practice field. Both of them were wrapped in iron sandballs made of black iron sand. These iron sandballs are like a flowing shield, flying and dancing on their bodies. In the air around them, there were also many fine iron sand particles. These fine iron sand floating in the air were sandwiched between 2 powerful magnetic fields. Sometimes they were pulled in the direction of Hyojin, and sometimes they were pulled in the direction of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. It could be seen that although the 2 sides were quietly confronting each other, the battle on the magnetic field had already been going on for a long time. After a while, the corner of Hyojin's mouth rose. "Let's play something new." After saying that, he raised his hand slightly, and the iron sandball wrapped around his body split into 2, instantly turning into 2 sharp iron thorns that glowed with a cold light. Then, he clenched his right hand into a fist. As he urged the magnetic release chakra in his body, the 2 iron thorns rotated parallel to each other and flew up, and the speed was getting faster and faster. Electric currents visible to the naked eye were gradually generated between each other, pulling each other. At this time, Hyojin's right hand that was clenched into a fist suddenly swung forward, and he shouted, "Magnetic release, magnetic impact." Shio! In an instant, the 2 iron thorns flying parallel to each other, accompanied by a sharp whistle, attacked the opponent's 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. Seeing this, the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets quickly urged their iron sandballs to turn into a huge iron shield, firmly protecting his front. However, when the 2 spinning iron thorns hit the iron shield, there was no sound of metal impact. Sandaime Kazekage's puppet used its own magnet release to shape the giant iron shield. At the moment when it was hit by Kuroto's 2 iron thorns, an electric arc swam on it, and then the original solid surface of the iron shield disintegrated instantly like fine quicksand. Walala! In the sound of iron sand falling to the ground, in just a moment, the huge iron shield of the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets became scattered iron sand on the ground. Hyojin smiled and immediately stopped the 2 iron thorns that attacked the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets. The contest between magnetic release Kekii limit is different from other Kekii limit. In the contest between magnetic release and magnetic release, if the strength of one side chakra is better than the other, then the weaker side has almost no ability to resist. Because magnetic force is very easy to be affected, in the face of a stronger magnetic force, the weaker side will collapse in an instant. This is also the reason why the high-intensity thunder release can restrain the magnetic release ninjutsu. It does not mean that the chakra nature of the thunder release is stronger than the magnetic release, but the high-intensity thunder release can affect the stimulation of the wind attribute chakra on the thunder attribute chakra, fundamentally disintegrating the environment that produces the magnetic release, thus causing the magnetic release ninjutsu to collapse due to the disorder of its own magnetic force. If the enemy on the opposite side is the 3 generations of Kazekage, it will not be so easy for Hyojin to win, but the opponent is just a puppet made from the corpses of the 3 generations of Kazekage by Sasori. Although it can also use magnetic release, the puppet that has lost the spirit of the 3 generations of Kazekage, in terms of the strength of chakra, there is a big gap between the strength of the real 3 generations of Kazekage. This difference in the strength of chakra may not be obvious in the contest with other ninjutsu, but when compared with the same magnetic release, it is immediately exposed. Chapter 442. After 2 months, Hyojin finally returned to the village. After retrieving the shadow doppelganger that has been replacing him to carry out the task of Umbu Team 7, a large amount of chaotic memories poured into Kuroto's mind. It took him a while to sort out what the shadow clone had experienced in the past 2 months. In the past 2 months, everything in Konoha was calm on the surface, but the vigilance in the dark was gradually escalating. Especially for the Umbu, the task was getting heavier and heavier day by day. Sueijin's shadow clone was also on duty for 7 consecutive days, sweeping more than a dozen suspicious areas around Konoha before he was given a day off and was able to return home to rest. Rubbing his chin while sitting cross-legged on the bed, Hyojin secretly thought to himself, could it be that the 3 generations have some other information channels? All the signs indicate that the 3 generations are planning something. It stands to reason that the Akatsuki organization hasn't made any movements for a long time, so the village's security should have gradually relaxed. But the 3 generations have secretly increased their security. This behavior is against common sense, which undoubtedly shows that the 3 generations are certain that the Akatsuki organization will launch a retaliatory attack on the village, and the attack should be getting closer and closer. But why are the 3 generations so certain? Hyojin frowned and fell into deep thought. Since the last joint raid, Hyojin has lost contact with Shinichi, who was lurking in the Akatsuki organization, and as time passes, Hyojin has become more and more worried about Shinichi's safety. There are only 2 possibilities for this situation. Either Shinichi's identity was exposed and he was eliminated by the Akatsuki organization, or Shinichi is under 24-hour surveillance and can't send any messages. Of course, Hyojin hopes that it's the latter, but if it's the latter, it means that the Akatsuki organization has changed its loose management and began to strictly monitor all of its members. At the same time, it also means that the members of the Akatsuki organization don't work in groups of 2 like before, but all of them are gathered together. Why do they always gather together? This question made Hyojin speculate that the Akatsuki organization must be doing something big recently. After all, the members of the Akatsuki organization are rebellious people, and if there is no reason for them to stay together, they won't obediently stay together. Leaving home, on the way to the Uchiha clan, Hyojin secretly thought, the 3 generations must know something. After the failure of the joint raid, the 3 generations have become more and more secretive. Even the well-informed Umbu can't find any information about the 3 generations. If it wasn't for the fact that Hyojin was a former member of the Umbu Team 11 and had a close relationship with Kakashi, he knew about the attack on Kakashi. At the same time, because he secretly controlled the mist, he knew that the 3 generations secretly held the 5 Kage assembly. He might not be able to find any clues. The 3 generations suppressed the attack on Kakashi and the patrol team. They didn't make it public. It's obvious that they want to cover up the peace and confuse the other 4 villages, making them think that Mai is safe. The 3 generations secretly contacted the other 4 villages to hold the 5 Kage assembly, and the location of the assembly is in the village. Obviously, they want to summon the 4 Kage to the village, while covering up the traces of the Akatsuki organization's activities in the village. They also want to summon the other 4 Kage to the village. Why do I feel like the 3 generations know what is going to happen in the village? So they deliberately summoned the 4 Kage to help Mai. Hyojin was also shocked by his own guess. If Kuroto's guess is correct, then Hokage-sama is not only plotting against the Akatsuki organization, but also the other 4 shinobi villages. These 2 months were enough for the other 4 Kage to consider whether or not to participate in the 5 Kage assembly and secretly plan their route to Mai. So, whether Hyojin's guess was correct or not, he believed that it would not be long before he knew the answer. Hyojin chuckled and said, "This old man is very evil." Not long after, Hyojin arrived at the Uchiha clan's land and met Jishuei and Itachi in a training field. After greeting them, Hyojin asked, "How's your body recovering?" Jishuei smiled and said, "My body has completely adapted to it." After a full 2 months of recovery, Jishuei's body has completely adapted to the Hashirama cells. At this time, not only has his pupil power increased, but his physical strength and chakra's amount have also improved to varying degrees. Hyojin said, "Very good, then let's start the eye transplant surgery." Jishuei nodded quickly. In order to suppress the Hashirama cells in his body, during this period of time, Jishui has been using the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in his eye sockets. Now that his body has adapted to the Hashirama cells, it's time to change back to his own Manjikyu Sharingan. The operation site is still located in the Death Forest. Because it is a simple eye transplant surgery, it only took a moment for Hyojin to skillfully remove the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Jishui's eye socket and transplant the Manjikyu Sharingan that has been soaked in nutrient solution back into his eye socket. After completing the eye transplant surgery, Hyojin looked at the instruments around the operating table and asked Jishui, "How do you feel?" Jishui, who was covering his eyes, shook his head, and after a while he said in surprise, "Senpai, my Manjikyu Sharingan's vision seems to have recovered a lot." Hyojin said, "After the transplantation of the Hashirama cells, your pupil power has been enhanced, and the pupil power that was previously consumed in your Manjikyu Sharingan will naturally recover slowly." After getting off the operating table, Jishui bowed deeply to Hyojin and said, "Senpai, it's all thanks to your help that I can recover my eyesight." Hyojin waved his hand and said, "We don't need to be too polite between us. By the way, I guess it will take 2 or 3 days for your eyesight to fully recover. So during this period, you better not use your pupil power lest it affects the recovery of your Manjikyu Sharingan." Jishui replied, "I understand." At this time, Hyojin put the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that was removed from Jishui's eye sockets and put it into a small nutrition tank. This time, when he helped Jishui transplant the Hashirama cells, Hyojin did not gain nothing. In addition to the harvest of surgical experience, his biggest gain was that after the yang release chakra contained in the Hashirama cells, the pupil power of the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan was significantly enhanced. Looking at the pair of eternal Manjikyu Sharingan that was put into a small nutrition tank by Hyojin, Jishui immediately said, "Because of me, Yanin lost her eyes for so long. I'm afraid that this period of time has caused great inconvenience to her." Hyojin smiled and said in his heart, "It's okay. She has been soaking in the tank." Chapter 443. After exchanging the Manjikyu Sharingan for Jishui, Hyojin told Jishui and Itachi about his speculation. After listening to Hyojin's analysis, Itachi asked with some doubt, "If Senpai's guess is correct, then it means that Naruto-sama not only knows about the actions of the Akatsuki, but also the approximate time of the action. But the Akatsuki is so secretive. How did Naruto-sama know so much about it?" Jishui said, "Could it be that Naruto-sama also has a spy in the Akatsuki?" The reason why she used the word "also" is because Jishui guessed that Shinichi has most likely joined Hyojin's side and became Hyojin's eyes and ears in the Akatsuki. Hyojin shook his head. The Akatsuki just suffer a loss, and even lost their base in the Rain Village. Now is the time to be careful, so it shouldn't be so easy to infiltrate them. Even Shinichi, who has long gained the trust of Obsidian, didn't have the opportunity to pass a message to Hyojin during this period of time. Logically speaking, it is unlikely that the 3 generations will be able to successfully plan a spy in the Akatsuki during this sensitive period. After pondering for a while, Itachi analyzed. This means that Naruto-sama has other sources of information. Hyojin gently nodded. "I suspect that the Akatsuki's operation against the village this time may have a partner, and the information may have been leaked from his partner. If the Akatsuki didn't leak the information themselves, then there's only one possibility, and that is that the partner of the Akatsuki organization leaked the information. In the shinobi world, the only organization that is qualified to cooperate with the Akatsuki organization is the Shinobi Village, and other small traitorous organizations are simply not qualified to cooperate with the Akatsuki organization." Jishui asked, "Senpai, what should we do?" Hyojin took out the plan that Itachi gave him before and said, "I will now give you 2 a task. Follow the exploration route in this plan and carefully explore it." Shursui took a look at the proposal and was stunned. He also has an impression of this plan. It is the plan that Itachi developed according to the requirements of Hyojin when he was protecting him. However, the practice of pupil power, ninjutsu, taijutsu, ninja tools, and other aspects were all erased, leaving only the part about exploring the ruins of Uchiha during the Warring States period. Itachi was somewhat surprised and asked, "Senior, you can't be serious, right?" Hyojin explained slowly. "In an ancient book, I learned that there is a divine artifact in the shinobi world called Sword of Ten Fists. This artifact is also known as the Sword of Sealing. It can seal the enemy into a Jinjutsu world, and according to the ancient book, this divine artifact is related to your Uchiha clan, and the clues are likely to be hidden in the ruins of your Uchiha clan." Itachi suddenly understood. "No wonder you mentioned Sword of Ten Fists and Yagami Mirror to me several times." Hyojin then said, "I need this Sword of Ten Fists to deal with the strong enemy in the Akatsuki organization who mastered space-time ninjutsu, and no one is more suitable than the two of you to explore the ruins of Uchiha clan." Jishui was a little worried. "What about the village? If we can't find the Sword of Ten Fists, we will always be in a passive position. Even if we can stop the enemy this time, we can't stop the next one. So believe in 3 generations. He is Naruto. He can protect the village." Compared to spending his energy on weakening the enemy, Hyojin prefers to focus on improving himself, because he has both a direction and a plan. As long as he is given enough time, he can smoothly stand on the top of the shinobi world and look down on all his enemies with a smile. Therefore, this is a competition between Kekkei Net and Jubi's Jinchuriki. If Hyojin achieves Kekkei Net first, then all the problems are no longer a problem. But if the Akatsuki organization gathers all the nine-tailed beasts and achieves Jubi's Jinchuriki first and releases Kagaya, then Hyojin will only be slightly stronger cannon fodder. Therefore, except for the matter of Jubi's Jinchuriki, Hyojin doesn't need to waste energy on every operation of the Akatsuki organization. At this time, a ninja crow flew in and landed on Hyojin's shoulder. Taking off the small scroll tied to the ninja crow's leg, Hyojin opened it and immediately said to Jishui and Itachi, "Yagura has secretly arrived at the village." "What?" Both Jishui and Itachi were taken aback. In fact, Suijin was also a little surprised. Although it has been a total of 2 months, the current situation is different from the past. If the village Kage wants to leave the village, in addition to making arrangements in the village, selecting capable guards, exploring hidden routes, and so on, it takes time. Therefore, Yagura, as the Mizukage, being able to arrive in Konoha within 2 months after receiving the news is already very efficient. Itachi sighed. "Naruto-sama's operation this time is really secretive. Our Uchiha clan didn't receive any news at all." Jishui seemed to have the same feeling and nodded. Yes, there was no news at all. Looking at the shocked faces of the two, Hyojin secretly cursed. "Is it really appropriate for the two of you to be so surprised? It is normal for the village to be able to hide from the eyes and ears of the Uchiha clan. As a noble shinobi who didn't even notice the night of the extermination of the clan, Hyojin doesn't care about the intelligence-gathering ability of the Uchiha clan." Waving his hand, Hyojin said, "Well, Yagura has secretly arrived at the village, which means that the plan of the 3 generations is going smoothly. You two don't need to worry about the affairs of the village. The most important task for the two of you now is to find the Sword of Jukin for me." "We understand." Jishui and Itachi heard this and nodded solemnly. After leaving the Uchiha clan, Kuroto returned home and took out the storage scroll containing the Chimera technique, as well as a living Onigiri sprout from the ninja bag he carried with him. Previously, cultivating the 2 wind release clones had used up the last batch of precious herbs in Hyojin's storage. Now, he didn't even have the money to concoct the nutrient solution, so he had to sell the Ghost Sprout technique and the Ghost Sprout technique as soon as possible in exchange for some money. As for the target, he had already chosen it, outside of my village in a dense forest. A figure wearing a black cloak with golden edges and a mask with a wind pattern slowly walked through the dense forest, step by step, into the depths of the forest. Swish! At this time, a root ninja suddenly jumped out from the bushes and launched an attack. However, before the short knife in the root ninja's hand could touch the black cloak with golden edges. The root ninja's body was entangled by black iron sand and imprisoned on the spot. Tell Danzo that I want to make a deal with him. Chapter 444. You are a member of Amatsukami? Being bound tighter and tighter by the flowing black iron sand, the root ninja could no longer breathe. That's right. The one with the wind mask was none other than Hyojin, the one who controlled the Wind Clone A class. The reason he came here was to trade for the Chimera technique and also to get used to the Wind Clone A class. Although this type A wind release clone body seems to be tailor-made for Suijin's soul body, it's like custom-made new clothes. After all, it still needs to be worn a lot. After all, the compatibility between a soul body and a physical body involved too many factors. It was not something that could be judged by feeling alone. No matter how good the Wind Clone A class was, Hyojin would not skip the process of getting used to it. The root ninja's face turned red as he asked, How did you know that the root's base is here? Hyojin waved his hand and removed the sand that bound the root ninja. He said lightly, I have no interest in talking nonsense with you. Lead the way, I want to see Danzo. After a while of retching, the root ninja said, Danzo, Sama is not here. Is that so? Hyojin snorted and said coldly, Forget it. It's not a problem for me to kill my way in anyway. The root ninja's face stiffened. Please wait a moment. I will inform him for you. Inside the root's base, Orochimaru, who was leaning against the wall with his arms crossed over his chest, said in a hoarse voice, Tisk, I don't know why. You obviously did so many things, but the old man still turned a blind eye to you. He obviously removed your roots, but he still let you keep so many people. I don't know why. You obviously did so many things, but the old man still turned a blind eye to you. Orochimaru, watch your tone. Danzo slammed his staff on the ground, and a powerful chakra burst out from his body. Feeling the powerful chakra, Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. Danzo was the same age as the 3 generations, and his body was already declining. Moreover, Danzo's strength was a notch lower than the 3 generations. Therefore, he should not possess such a powerful chakra due to his old age. Thinking of a possibility, Orochimaru's expression turned serious. You've succeeded? Danzo didn't deny it, and said in a low voice, This old man has already subdued the 1st generation cells. Just as I thought. Orochimaru looked at Danzo with a hint of respect in his eyes. Although he was often considered crazy, in fact, Orochimaru was more cautious than any other researcher. This was because his ultimate goal was eternal life. Because of this, any experiment that might endanger his life was useless to Orochimaru. Therefore, when faced with the great risk of transplanting the 1st generation cells, he chose to give up. When faced with the great risk of practicing immortal arts, he chose to give up. When faced with the unpredictable hidden danger of the Chimera technique, he still chose to give up. But just like Suijin, Orochimaru has a little bit of admiration for pioneers like Hiriko and Danzo who are willing to bet their lives on the line. But of course, it's just a little bit. Danzo said in a serious tone, You have been in the Akatsuki, and you are old acquaintances with Hiriko. I guess you must have the Chimera technique. Tell me what you want. As long as you hand over the Chimera technique, I can satisfy you. Orochimaru smiled and was about to speak. Swish, suddenly, a root ninja landed beside Danzo and whispered a few words into Danzo's ear. After listening, Danzo frowned and said, Invite him in. Yes. The root ninja replied respectfully and immediately used the body flicker technique and disappeared from the room. At this time, Orochimaru asked, Who is it? Danzo said, Take a guess. To be able to make you temporarily cancel the Chimera technique, the identity of the other party must be extraordinary. After a pause, Orochimaru said with a smile, Could it be someone from Akatsuki? Danzo shook his head. Orochimaru frowned and said, Emitsuki. Danzo didn't answer and just looked at the entrance. After a while, a figure wearing a black cloak and a mask with a gale pattern came in. Danzo and Orochimaru immediately looked at Hyojin from head to toe. At this time, Hyojin also noticed Orochimaru and thought to himself, "Hey, why is he here?" Danzo asked, "Who are you?" Hyojin said in a cold tone, "Amatsuki, Kaze Chimera." Kaze Chimera? Danzo and Orochimaru chewed on this name at the same time. They know that every member of Amatsuki has a code name, and this code name often represents the main chakra attribute of the member. For example, Suijin is a Kekkei Jinkai ninja who is proficient in ice release, and Homisubi is a member of the Uchiha clan who is proficient in fire release. Since the person in front of them has the code name Kaze Chimera, it undoubtedly means that his main chakra attribute is wind. In other words, he is the member of Amatsuki who possesses magnetic release, Kekkei Jinkai. Danzo then said, "How can you prove that you are a member of Amatsuki and not an imposter?" Humph! Accompanied by Hyojin's cold snort, a cloud of iron sand swept towards Danzo. Danzo's figure flashed and avoided the iron sand by a hair's breadth and said, "All right, what do you want from this old man?" In the shinobi world, there are only a few people who have mastered magnetic release Kekkei Jinkai. So after seeing Hyojin using magnetic release with his own eyes, Danzo no longer had any doubts. Putting away the iron sand, Hyojin said, 3 generations is already too old, and he doesn't have the courage to cooperate with Amatsuki, so we need a partner with courage and ambition, and you are one of the partners we have chosen. In order to show our sincerity, we can sell you the Chimera technique, and if you want, we can even sell you a living ghost sprout, as long as you can pay the price. Danzo's expression changed. How come you have the Chimera technique? Just as he proposed the Chimera technique to Orochimaru, Amatsuki inexplicably came knocking on his door. This made him vigilant. Hyojin said bluntly, "We have captured Akatsuki's Shino and obtained the Chimera technique." After weighing the pros and cons, Danzo asked, "What price do I have to pay to obtain the Chimera technique and a living ghost sprout?" Hyojin stretched out his palm and said, 50 million. Danzo frowned. So cheap. After hearing Hyojin's price, Danzo subconsciously began to doubt whether the Chimera technique in Hyojin's hands was real or not. Chapter 445. Cheap. Looking at Danzo's face, full of suspicion, Hyojin suddenly felt that his understanding of money and Danzo's understanding seemed to be on a completely different channel. 50 million is obviously a huge amount of money. After secretly exclaiming in his heart, he immediately became angry. Danzo, that damn old bastard, how much of the village people's blood and sweat has he taken from them? How can he be so arrogant? Hyojin, who felt that he was being despised, indeed had a reason to be angry. The price of 50 million was by no means a spur-of-the-moment idea, but the result of careful consideration. It must be known that Tsunade was forced to accept a disciple due to the debt problem, and as for the later 70 million, that was added by Hyojin himself in order to let you stay more comfortable by Tsunade's side. In other words, the huge amount of 50 million is almost equivalent to the identity of a Sannin disciple. Not only can my ninja get the protection of one of the Sannin, Tsunade, but also can learn from Tsunade, such as In Seal Kama monstrous strength, and so on. If Tsunade succeeds the throne of Naruto, this my ninja will even be qualified to be the next Naruto. Therefore, 50 million is a huge amount of money that can change a person's identity, status, and even fate. If calculated according to the bounty, as one of the 12 guardian shinobi of the Land of Fire, the bounty of Asuma's head was only 35 million. It must be known that at that time, Asuma was already one of the few elite Jonin in Mai, and there were only a few who were stronger than him in the village, and he didn't fall behind when competing with the Akatsuki organization's Ghost Mermaid and Flying Dan. If it wasn't for the lack of information, he wouldn't have died so easily. But this huge amount of money of 5 times the value of Asuma, and Danzo said so cheap, so casually, which made Hyojin so angry that he almost vomited blood. Dong dong. At this time, Danzo heavily knocked on the staff in his hand and said in a deep voice, "As long as the Chimera technique in your hands is real, money is not a problem." If it wasn't to maintain the mysterious feeling of Amitsukami, Hyojin really wanted to change his mind on the spot and give a new price. But the price has already been given. If he reneged now, it would make Danzo look down on Amitsukami. So, Hyojin suppressed the anger in his heart and smiled. Whether it is real or fake, you will know when you see it. After saying that, Hyojin took out the storage scroll containing the Chimera technique and the ghost sprout from the storage bag on his waist, and threw it to Danzo. After catching the storage scroll, Danzo, who was used to being depressed, showed a rare expression of excitement. He quickly threw the staff in his hand to the side and opened the storage scroll with both hands. Seems like this old man has been eyeing the Chimera technique for a long time. Looking at the excited expression on Danzo's face, Hyojin suddenly realized that he had made a mistake. From Hyojin's point of view, the Chimera technique did indeed have the ability to devour the bloodline limit, but the hidden danger was also very obvious. Although Danzo was not a pure researcher, he had been immersed in this field for a long time, so there was no reason that he couldn't see this point. So when he evaluated the Chimera technique, Hyojin also took these negative factors into consideration. However, it turned out that Hyojin had completely underestimated Danzo's desire for the Chimera technique. Or more accurately, Hyojin had completely underestimated Danzo's ambition. After carefully examining the Chimera technique and then looking at the living ghost sprout, Danzo suppressed his joy and asked Orochimaru, "Is this Chimera technique real?" Orochimaru took the Chimera technique provided by Hyojin from Danzo's hand. After carefully examining it, he found that this Chimera technique was more advanced than the Chimera technique he got from Hiriko before he defected from the Akatsuki. It was obviously an improved version of the Chimera technique, so he became interested and carefully examined it while nodding. Yes, it's indeed real. After getting a positive answer from Orochimaru, Danzo was immediately overjoyed. He no longer cared about the dignity of the root leader and held the living ghost sprout as if it was a treasure. At this time, Hyojin had quietly activated his Byakugan. In the vision of the Byakugan, he could clearly see that there were two sources of chakra in Danzo's body that had not completely fused. This meant that Danzo had transplanted the first-generation cells, but because he was not an Uchiha, he could not completely fuse the Yin-release chakra and Yang-release chakra into one. TSK. This is really. For a moment, Hyojin couldn't think of a word to describe Danzo. Right now, Danzo's body is like half ice and half fire, and the ice and fire just reached a weak balance, which allowed him to survive by a fluke. If he was in a battle and overused one side's chakra, the balance would be broken. Then, even without the enemy, his own body would be able to take his life. Thinking of this, Hyojin reminded, "Don't underestimate this ghost sprout. Its ability to devour flesh is beyond imagination. Our organization has conducted internal research on it and found that it is very difficult to control. Therefore, this ghost sprout has a very high risk, and you must be fully prepared before using it." Danzo didn't expect Hyojin to say such words, and looked at Hyojin with surprise. Orochimaru also looked at Hyojin and thought, Amitsukami showed such kindness to Danzo. Do they really want to support Danzo to ascend to the position of Naruto? Hyojin told the truth, of course, not for Danzo's benefit, but he still needed Danzo to test the hidden danger of the ghost sprout. If Danzo died inexplicably after transplanting the ghost sprout, wouldn't it be a waste of Hyojin's efforts? But to Hyojin's surprise, Danzo waved his hand and laughed. A mere ghost sprout can't do anything to this old man. Hyojin immediately cursed. Damn, if I knew he didn't care about the hidden danger of the ghost sprout, I wouldn't have offered such a conservative price. What loss? Clap, clap. Danzo lightly clapped his hands, and a moment later, Root Ninja landed beside him. Danzo ordered, "Prepare the money." The Root Ninja quickly responded, then quickly took a box and opened it in front of Hyojin, revealing a neatly stacked stack of money. Danzo smiled and said to Hyojin, "Here is 50 million. This old man will remember the favor of Amitsukami." Chapter 446. Carrying a box of money, Hyojin slowly left the root base. For someone with the Akugan, it was easy for him to observe the progress of Danzo's ghost sprout transplant. There was no need to rush, so he decisively left the root base. Not long after he left the forest, Hyojin suddenly stopped, turned around, and said, "Come out." At this time, a figure walked out from behind a big tree and said with a mocking face, as expected of a member of Amatsutsukami, "You sure are sharp. Orochimaru, why are you following me?" Hyojin asked coldly. Orochimaru leaned against a big tree with his arms crossed and asked, "I'm curious. Why did Amatsutsukami choose Danzo? What are you planning to use him for?" Hyojin curled his lips and said, "I thought you no longer care about my." Orochi laughed and said, "I'm just a little curious. You want to know?" After a cold snort, Hyojin said, "Beat me, and I'll tell you." To be honest, Hyojin really wanted to use the type A wind-release clone body to fight with a master like Orochimaru and test the strength of the type A wind-release clone body. Seeing that Hyojin was planning to fight, Orochimaru's eyes narrowed. He was indeed curious about why Amatsutsukami suddenly contacted Danzo, but he remembered that he had other things to do next. So he said, "Forget it. It's just a little curiosity. There's no need to be enemies with Amatsutsukami." Swoosh, as soon as he finished speaking, Orochimaru disappeared in front of Hyojin with a blink technique. Hyojin was startled and asked, "Why did he leave so quickly?" Orochimaru has never been a guy who easily admits defeat, and this time he withdrew so decisively, which made Kuroda faintly feel that Orochimaru seems to have something else to do, so he didn't want to entangle with him anymore. After returning home, Kuroda counted the banknotes he had just earned. Dong, dong, dong. Suddenly, a series of hurried knocks came from outside the courtyard. Hyojin, who had already changed back to his EN escape body, opened the courtyard door and saw Ziyuin standing at the door with a pout. Ase stood behind her and smiled at Hyojin. Hyojin touched Ziyuin's head and asked, "Why do you look unhappy? Who made you angry?" Ziyuin quickly said, "Brother, I have a secret to tell you." Hyojin smiled and immediately led Ziyuin and Ase into the house. During this period of time, because he was busy with all kinds of things, Hyojin had to entrust Ziyuin to Bell. Fortunately, Bell's parents liked Ziyuin very much, and the 3 generations also gave Ziyuin a lot of preferential treatment in the village because of her identity as a witch of the country of demons. Therefore, Ziyuin lived very comfortably during her time in Mai. After entering the house, Ziyuin looked around sneakily. After confirming that there was no one, she leaned over and whispered in Hyojin's ear, "Brother, I saw the death prophecy." Hyojin, who did not pay much attention at first, frowned slightly. "Whose death prophecy?" Ziyuin said. "It's the grandma who sells octopus balls." Ase, who was at the side, quickly explained, "Sir, it's the owner of Tanagawa Restaurant on Ancient Spring Street." A commoner, after thinking to himself, Hyojin asked, "How did the grandma die in the prophecy?" Ziyuin recalled for a while and pouted. "I think she was killed by the roof." No, I think she was killed by the wooden door." "Ah, anyway, the scene in the death prophecy was a mess. I can't remember how the grandma died." Hyojin said, "Be good, Zin. Try to recall. What else did you see in the death prophecy?" Ziyuin supported her chin and recalled seriously again. She said slowly, "The death prophecy happened at night. I only saw a huge black shadow sweeping around the village, making the village a mess. Think about it carefully. Are there any other details? By the way, the Ilu ramen shop was also destroyed." As she said that, Ziyuin covered her chest and muttered to herself, "Oh no, I still have a coupon that I haven't used." The Ilu ramen shop was destroyed? The Ilu ramen shop was located in the center of the village. If even the Ilu ramen shop was affected, it meant that the attack area almost covered the entire village. "Who else did you tell about these things?" Ziyuin shook her head. "Sister Ling hasn't been home for a few days. I didn't have a chance to tell her." Ase said, "Master Kuroda, Master, he didn't tell anyone about the death prophecy other than you and me. As the guard of the Miko of the demon country, Ase knew better than anyone else about the Miko's death prophecy ability. For the Miko herself, it was not a good thing, because once this ability was exposed, the public would naturally reject and dislike the Miko. Therefore, she had been trying her best to prevent Ziyuan from publicizing the death prophecy she had recently seen. Hyojin nodded and said, "Very good. Don't tell anyone about this." Ziyuan asked in a low voice, "Brother, don't you need to inform Naruto-sama? I saw that a lot of people were injured in the death prophecy." Hyojin rubbed Ziyuan's head and said, "I will personally handle the matter of informing Naruto-sama. You don't have to worry about it." Hyojin knows very well that the 3 generations have been planning this for a long time. So when the village was attacked, the 3 generations must have taken precautions. Even if he told the 3 generations about the death prophecy at this time, it is unlikely to reduce the village's losses. After comforting Zin, Hyojin pulled Ase aside and said, "Have you participated in the village's evacuation drill?" Ase nodded and said, "Yes." Hyojin lowered his voice and said, "Once there is a riot, you don't need to care about anything else. Just take Zin to take refuge, understand?" "Yes." Ase nodded very solemnly. After sending away Ziyuan and Ase, Hyojin sat cross-legged in the room and thought to himself, "What is that huge shadow?" In the ruins of Uchiha, during the Warring States period, Jishuei stroked the mural on the wall and shouted, "Itachi, come here and look at the person on this mural." Itachi, who was not far away, came over and saw that the mural in front of Jishuei depicted a person of the Uchiha clan who seemed to be using the Susanoo eye technique. What was striking was that the Susanoo seemed to be carrying a huge gourd in its right hand. Itachi wondered, "How can there be such a big gourd?" Jishuei said while stroking the mural, "It's strange. The color of the gourd on the mural is completely different from the color of the Susanoo. It doesn't seem to be the ability of the Susanoo." Chapter 447. Although the murals in the ruins are old, the colors on them are still gorgeous, so it is very clear that the color of the Susanoo is different from the color of the gourd. The Susanoo was slightly greenish-blue, while the gourd in its hand was conspicuously red. The contrast was so great that it was hard not to notice it. As the owner of the Manjikyu Sharingan, Jishuei and Itachi are both Uchiha clansmen who can open their own Susanoo. Therefore, the two of them are not unfamiliar with Susanoo. They know that Susanoo is a Manjikyu Sharingan technique, and it is actually the product of the combination of the user's pupil power and chakra. The color projected corresponds to the nature of a user's chakra, so in theory, each Susanoo should have a single color, because everyone's chakra nature is the same. If there are multiple colors on a Susanoo, then there is only one reasonable explanation, and that is there are other chakras that do not belong to the owner of the Susanoo that have entered the Susanoo. Itachi looked along the murals on the wall and had a general understanding of the story described in the murals. The protagonist of the murals is a patriarch of the Uchiha clan during the Warring States period. He not only awakened the Manjikyu Sharingan and opened the Susanoo, but also obtained a very powerful weapon, which is the red gourd in the hand of the Susanoo. This patriarch, with his Manjikyu Sharingan and that powerful weapon, swept the shinobi world at that time and pushed the Uchiha clan to the peak of its power at that time. Itachi wondered, the gourd in his hand, is it the Jukin? Hearing Itachi's whisper, Jishuei said, "Shouldn't the Jukin be a sword?" Itachi said his speculation. As a sword of sealing, the appearance of the Jukin may be different from the ordinary sword. Jishuei nodded. Yes, this is indeed a clue. After reaching a consensus, the two of them split up to search for clues in the ruins. However, after searching for a long time, they did not find any clues related to the gourd in the mural. When they met again, Jishuei said, "There is no record of this gourd in the tribe. Could it be that this gourd was buried together with the ancestor Uchiha on the mural?" Itachi also thought of this possibility. If the gourd is really so powerful that it allowed the Uchiha ancestor to sweep the entire shinobi world, then Konoha clan shouldn't have no records of it. The only possibility is that the gourd was buried with the Uchiha ancestor, and in order to prevent outsiders from disturbing the tomb of the Uchiha ancestor, the Konoha clan destroyed all the information about the gourd, leaving only vague legends and murals of the Uchiha ancestor. Spreading out the map in his hand, Itachi drew a few circles on the map based on his memory and said, "I have read the ancient books of the family. These locations are the tombs of our ancestors of Uchiha." After the establishment of the Mai clan, the dead Mai ninjas were buried in the cemetery near the monument, and the Uchiha clan is no exception. Therefore, the cemetery of Uchiha during the Warring States period has long been abandoned, and most of them are unattended. After hesitating for a moment, Jishui said, "Let's go and have a look." Although disturbing the tomb of the ancestor is a very rude thing to do, but in contrast, protecting the village and protecting the family is more important. If the legendary Jukin is really in the tomb of an ancestor of Uchiha, then Jishui would rather disturb the peace of the ancestor and obtain the artifact Jukin that can protect the village and the family. Itachi did not hesitate and said, "Brother Jishui, rest assured, the ancestors of the family will not blame us." In a practice field of the Mai clan, Kurenai, who completed the training task, slowly walked to the side of the practice field, picked up a towel to wipe the sweat, and held a water bottle to replenish the water. Although she has become a member of the Umbu with heavy tasks, Kurenai did not relax at all. She takes some time almost every day to hone herself in the practice field. The previous mission to assassinate the Mizukage of 4 generations left a big knot in her heart. She can't stand the various preferential treatment given to her by her captain, Hyojin, and she can't stand the fact that she is just a subordinate in the eyes of her captain. "Damn it, you look down on me. I will definitely surpass you." Whenever she thinks of this, Kurenai secretly encourages herself. She wants to prove to everyone that she is not worse than a Jutsu Kekkai Genkai. Although she has the idea of competing with Hyojin, Kurenai also understands that some of Hyojin's advice to her is right. So during this period, she has been studying how to combine the family's secret Jinjutsu with Taijutsu to develop more powerful and more versatile jutsu. At this time, a tall young man came over and said, "Kurenai, what a coincidence, I didn't expect to meet you here. By the way, there seems to be a new restaurant in the village today. Let's go and have a try." It was Asuma, who had just returned to the village not long ago, who came forward to chat with Kurenai. After several years of experience under the daimyo of the Land of Fire, Asuma has obviously matured a lot and is no longer the arrogant boy who contradicted his father in the special Jonin assessment. Glancing at Asuma's attentive face, Kurenai shook her head and said, "No, I have a task tomorrow." Asuma scratched his head and said, "Oh, really? Then let's talk about it later." Kurenai didn't say anything more. After packing up her belongings, she directly walked past Asuma and left the practice field. Looking at Kurenai's departing figure, Asuma murmured, "Hey, is it my method of chatting up people wrong? But is this what Kakashi taught me?" After dragging her tired body back home, before she had time to sit on the sofa to rest, Kurenai felt as if she was being stared at by a sinister snake. "Kurenai, it seems that you have also grown up." A hoarse voice that seemed to contain magic came from behind Kurenai. Kurenai was shocked when she heard this. She suddenly turned around and saw a black shadow standing in the shadow of the room. "Orochimaru, why are you in the village? What do you want?" Because the sun was setting, the sky was getting dark, so Kurenai couldn't see the appearance of the black shadow standing in the shadow, but she recognized the identity of the other party just by the trademark hoarse voice. Orochimaru came out of the shadow and said with a smile, "Don't be nervous. I just need you to do something for me." Kurenai suppressed the fear in her heart and took out a kunai from the ninja bag around her waist. "Are you kidding me? How could I help a traitor of mine?" Chapter 448. The strength of Orochimaru has been engraved in the heart of every Mai ninja. Even Kakashi, the best in the same period, will be frightened when facing Orochimaru. In the original Chunin exam, Kakashi's first reaction after encountering Orochimaru was to try his best to die with Orochimaru. But after Orochimaru left, he suddenly realized that his idea was too stupid. But this does not mean that Kurenai will be captured. As a Mayumbu who is directly under Naruto, she can accept defeat, but she can't accept cowardice from the bottom of her heart. Forcing herself to look directly into Orochimaru's eyes, Kurenai asked sternly, "What is your purpose in sneaking into the village?" Orochimaru laughed and said, "It's not good for you to know too much." Kurenai said angrily, "Even if it's you, you will pay the price for underestimating me." "Oh, really?" Shrugging, Orochimaru asked indifferently, "What kind of price will it be?" "Isn't he afraid that I will ask for outside help and alarm the masters in the village?" Seeing that Orochimaru did not seem to have any intention of attacking immediately, Kurenai's heart was full of doubts. At the moment, Mai was heavily guarded inside and outside. As one of the Umbu, Kurenai was very clear about this. Not only was there Naruto 3 generations in the village, but Jiraiya and Tsunade Heim also returned to the village. Even if Orochimaru was strong, facing so many masters, he would certainly not be able to get any advantage. So she was very surprised why Orochimaru took the risk to sneak into the village to find her and was not in a hurry to attack. "No," Kurenai suddenly reacted. "It's not that Orochimaru was not in a hurry to attack, but he had already attacked." However, by the time she reacted, her mind was already in a trance. After staggering a few steps, she fell to the ground and said intermittently, "Poison. Poison gas. You're despicable." Orochimaru walked over with a smile and squatted in front of Red. "This is the alabaster snake venom that I've modified. How do you feel?" Kurenai's consciousness gradually blurred. She didn't expect that one of the Sannin, Orochimaru, would use poison to deal with a special jonin like her. In fact, with Kurenai's strength, she shouldn't have made such a mistake, but Orochimaru's identity as one of the Sannin really gave her too much pressure, making her focus of vigilance on Orochimaru and ignore the surrounding environment. When he saw Orochimaru reaching his hand towards him, his eyelids were extremely red. Indignantly, his vision turned black and he fell into a coma. Through the murals, Jishuei and Itachi, who had found clues, immediately split up and acted separately. Because both of them are members of the Uchiha clan, they are very familiar with the distribution of the ruins of the Uchiha clan, coupled with the fact that they have the Manjikyu Sharingan. Their insight is far superior to that of ordinary people. So in just a few days, they have already searched 7 or 8 tombs of the Uchiha Warring States period. In these abandoned cemeteries, most of the remains of Uchiha ancestors had been moved away by the Uchiha clan. The 2 of them had opened more than a dozen old tombs, but they found nothing. But when it came to the safety of the village, neither of them had any intention of stopping and continued the tomb robbing journey. After opening another tomb of Uchiha ancestors, Itachi walked into the dark tomb with a solemn gaze. Although he hadn't seen the coffin inside, based on the length of the tomb and the size of the tomb, Itachi could judge that the identity of the Uchiha ancestors buried here must be extraordinary. It was most likely a certain leader of the Uchiha clan. At the end of the tomb, a stone tablet came into Itachi's sight. He looked at it and found that the stone tablet was very familiar. He seemed to have seen the same stone tablet when he was exploring a certain ruin before, but there was an obvious groove in the center of the stone tablet, and there was an obvious bulge in the center of the stone tablet. Coming to the stone tablet, Itachi studied it a little and then reached out and pressed on the bulge in the center of the stone tablet. As Itachi pressed hard, a stone round plate fell from the bulge of the stone tablet. The size of the round plate seemed to correspond to the groove on the stone tablet in the previous ruin. Picking up the round plate, Itachi looked around and found that there was only this stone tablet at the end of the tomb. There was neither a tomb chamber nor a shadow of a coffin. So he said, "It turned out to be a fake tomb." The clue of the round plate was so obvious. The clever Itachi naturally understood that the Uchiha ruins he had searched before must have hidden secrets that he hadn't discovered. So he sent a message to Jishuei and rushed to the ruins. Jishuei's speed was the fastest of Mai, only below Hyojin in the Tenseigan chakra mode, so before Itachi arrived, Jishui had already arrived. After meeting Itachi, the two entered the ruins together. Coming to the stone tablet, Jishui asked, "Is this the stone tablet you mentioned?" Itachi nodded, and immediately installed the round plate obtained in the tomb passage into the groove of the stone tablet. The size of the round plate was just right, and it fit seamlessly. When the round plate was placed on the stone tablet, both Jishui and Itachi felt a wave of chakra at the same time, and then the ground trembled, revealing a downward passage. Jishui said, "Did you feel it?" Itachi gently nodded. "Well, it's our Uchiha's Genjutsu." Just at the moment when he installed the round plate in the groove of the stone tablet, the seal hidden in the stone tablet immediately triggered a Genjutsu, but this Genjutsu was not difficult for Jishui and Itachi, who have Manjikyu Sharingan, to break it in an instant. Through the downward passage, the two soon came to a tomb chamber. In the center of the tomb chamber, there was a coffin, and on the side of the coffin, there was a giant stone gourd sculpture, which looks very similar to the gourd in the mural. Walking around the coffin, Jishui said, "This coffin has never been opened." Itachi asked, "What should we do?" "The sword of Tokugawa is probably in it." In the previous tomb chamber, the remains in it were basically moved away by the family one after another. So Jishui and Itachi dared to open the coffin boldly. However, the coffin in front of them had obviously not been opened, and it was very likely that the remains of an ancestor of Uchiha were lying in it. So they were a little hesitant. After thinking for a while, Jishui said, "Inform Kuroto Senpai. He has Byakugan, and he will know at a glance whether the sword of Tokugawa is in the coffin or not." Itachi nodded, and then immediately released the communication crow. After that, the two of them searched in the tomb chamber, but the tomb area was not large. After a while, they gathered in front of a huge stone gourd sculpture next to the coffin. "I always feel that there is something strange about this stone gourd sculpture." Saying that, Itachi reached out to the stone gourd sculpture. Suddenly, Jishui on the side had a bad feeling, and she hurriedly said, "Don't." However, Jishui's warning was a step too late. The moment Itachi touched the stone gourd sculpture, he and Jishui were sucked into the stone gourd sculpture together. Chapter 449. Outside my village. With her hands tied behind her back, Kurenai followed Orochimaru. Her face looked a little sluggish, but there was a stubborn look in her eyes. After a long time, Kurenai couldn't help but ask, "Where are you taking me?" Orochimaru replied casually, "You will know when we get there." Kurenai frowned. "If you want to attack the village through me, then you have the wrong idea." Orochimaru stopped and said with a smile, "You don't seem to know your situation." "Humph." Kurenai snorted heavily, not afraid of Orochimaru's threat at all. Staring at Kurenai's determined expression, Orochimaru smiled lightly and immediately withdrew his gaze. He took out a round card from his arms and looked at it thoughtfully while saying, "You only need to do one thing for me, and if it goes well, I can consider letting you go. Don't worry, this matter has nothing to do with my..." If Itachi was here, he would have found that the round card in Orochimaru's hand is almost exactly the same as the one he found. Obviously, Orochimaru has also been tracking the clues of the Tenseigan sword. No, it should be said that Orochimaru is the first person to investigate the clues of the Tenseigan sword. Several years before Hyojin began to deploy the search for the Tenseigan sword, Orochimaru had already been collecting information to look for the legendary Tenseigan sword. Like Itachi, Orochimaru also found a round card in a ruin, and through the clues of the round card, he successfully found the Uchiha ruin where the round card could be used to open the mechanism. However, unlike Jishui and Itachi, when he installed the round card in the groove of the stone tablet and activated the mechanism, the Genjutsu on the stone tablet baffled him, making him unable to crack it. As one of the Sannin, Orochimaru really has any shortcomings. The Genjutsu should be one of the most obvious ones. Jishui and Itachi broke the illusion in an instant. They did not even pay much attention to it. However, Orochimaru was stumped by it for several months. He was stopped in front of the stone tablet. Considering that violent destruction might cause unexpected changes, Orochimaru had to come up with other ideas. The clan with the strongest genjutsu is naturally the Uchiha clan, but considering that the Uchiha clan has two Manjikyu Sharingan powerhouses, Jishuei and Itachi, in order to avoid alerting the enemy, Orochimaru did not choose the Uchiha clan. In addition to the Uchiha clan, there are two other clans in my village that are best at genjutsu. They are the Kurenai clan and the Kurama clan. The Kurama clan has a small population, and after the death of the previous patriarch in the Third Shinobi War, there are only some old, weak women and children left in the clan. Therefore, Orochimaru naturally turned his attention to Kurenai of the Kurenai clan. Although the current Kurenai's comprehensive strength is not top-notch, but when it comes to genjutsu, she is almost one of the strongest genjutsu ninjas in the village other than the Uchiha clan. Putting the round plate back into his arms, Orochimaru glanced at Kurenai and thought to himself, maybe she can solve the genjutsu on the stone tablet, but I have to speed up. If Kuroto comes looking for me, it will be troublesome. Orochimaru knew that Kurenai is Hyojin's subordinate. Once she goes missing, Hyojin will inevitably search for her. In order to avoid trouble and disrupt his plan to find the Tenseigan, he immediately bit his finger and summoned a big snake. Then, he carried the dispirited Kurenai and jumped on the back of the snake. This big snake seemed to have some kind of innate ability. It produced wind under its abdomen, and with just a slight shake of its body, it rushed a long distance away. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared with Orochimaru and Red, Kurenai's house in my village. Hyojin, who had activated the Byakugan, looked around with a gloomy face, searching for any possible clues. Kurenai's disappearance was naturally the first one to be alarmed, as the captain of the 7th Squad. Swish, in the sound of the wind, Gale landed on the balcony and reported to Hyojin in the house. Captain, there is nothing in the practice field that Kurenai often goes to. Hyojin nodded. Although it is only a preliminary investigation, he can confirm that the place where Kurenai was attacked is here. It is Kurenai's own house. It seems that the attacker is a master. Kurenai has made rapid progress recently. In addition, she has received special training from the Umbu, so she is proficient in stealth and assassination. There may be many ninjas who can defeat her, but there are not many ninjas who can make her disappear quietly. However, the opponent can easily subdue Kurenai and even leave no traces of fighting. It can be seen that the opponent is not weak. At this time, Shien led Asma to Kurenai's house and reported to Hyojin. He is the last person in the village to see Kurenai. Asma, who learned that Kurenai is missing, was very anxious. Before Hyojin asked him, he asked, "Did you find any clues? How could Kurenai disappear for no reason?" Hyojin moved his face to the side and said, "She should have been attacked." Asma said angrily, Who did it?" Hyojin shook his head silently. From the current situation, unless the opponent has an ulterior motive, the possibility of Kurenai's survival is not high. I will definitely find her. Asma was a little lost, and he rushed out of the house while muttering. Hyojin's eyes gradually turned cold, and he said to himself, "How dare you touch my subordinates? Don't let me find you." After returning home, Hyojin, who is still thinking about Kurenai's disappearance, found a ninja crow standing on his windowsill. After opening the window, Hyojin took down the communication scroll tied to the ninja crow's leg. He glanced at it and said, "Hey, they found something so quickly." The Sword of 10 Punches was related to whether or not it could restrain Obsidian, who has 2 Shinwei, so it must be in his hands as soon as possible. Therefore, Hyojin temporarily put aside the matter of Kurenai's disappearance. After leaving a shadow clone in the village, Hyojin changed into the type a wind release clone and sneaked out of the village. After leaving the village, he immediately used the magnetic release technique, and a pair of black iron sand wings spread on his back. He quickly flew to the Uchiha ruins where Jishui and Itachi sent the message. After a long time, he finally arrived at the Uchiha ruins. Landing on the dome of the ruins, Hyojin looked around and felt that it was very familiar. He said, "Hey, isn't this the place where Itachi and Sasuke had their final battle?" Hyojin quickly recognized that it was the Uchiha ruins where Itachi and Sasuke had their final battle in the original space-time. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, there was a low rumbling sound in the distance. Hyojin looked over and saw smoke and dust flying over there. It seemed that there was a huge object rushing towards the ruins. Chapter 450. Under the mask of the Gale pattern, the Byakugan and Sujin's eye sockets slowly opened, then looking at the rising smoke and dust in the distance, his brows gradually wrinkled. Orochimaru. In the distance, a huge green snake was rushing towards the ruins, and on its back stood two people. They were Orochimaru and the missing Kurenai. Humph! So it was Orochimaru who attacked Kurenai. No wonder he did it without leaving any clues. Snorting lightly, Hyojin had a lot of questions in his heart. Why did he kidnap Kurenai? Judging from the route Orochimaru took, he was obviously also coming for the ruins of Uchiha. Thinking of this, Hyojin suddenly understood. No wonder he left so quickly outside the root base. It turned out that he also found the clues of the Tenseigan. Did he kidnap Kurenai because he needed Kurenai's ability? Is it an illusion? Hyojin was not surprised that Orochimaru was looking for the Tenseigan. In the original space and time, when Orochimaru was sealed by Itachi with the Tenseigan, he once said to Itachi, "So the Tenseigan has been hidden by you all this time." It can be seen that Orochimaru spent a lot of time and effort looking for the Tenseigan. But this is also reasonable for him, who has seen the power of the Rinnegan. If he wants to defeat Nagato, the artifact Tenseigan is undoubtedly his only hope. After all, he is a traitor of the Akatsuki, a target that Nagato wants to get rid of. Whether he is willing or not, he must consider the possibility of fighting with Nagato. In just a moment, the green snake arrived at the edge of the ruins of Uchiha. At this time, Orochimaru on the back of the green snake also found Hyojin standing quietly on the dome of the ruins of Uchiha. His face suddenly became very ugly. Looking at Kurenai behind Orochimaru, although she looked a little tired, there seemed to be no injuries on her body. Hyojin secretly breathed a sigh of relief, then said to Orochimaru coldly, "Let her go." The gloomy face of Orochimaru flashed a trace of surprise in his eyes. Not only Orochimaru, but also Kurenai, who was threatened by Orochimaru, was also surprised at this moment. She never thought that the person who saved her was not a Mai ninja, but a mysterious person dressed as a member of Amatsukami. Naturally, Hyojin said this deliberately. Although the Sword of Ten Fists was a divine weapon, it still needed to be taken by surprise in order to unleash its greatest power. If everyone knew that the Sword of Ten Fists was in his hands, they would be on guard against him, and the power of the Sword of Ten Fists would be greatly reduced. Therefore, Kuroda didn't want Orochimaru to know that Amatsukami was also looking for the Sword of Jutsu, and had already found this place by following the clues. So he used Kuroda as an excuse to deliberately show that his appearance here was just to rescue Kuroda, who was kidnapped, and had nothing to do with the Sword of Jutsu. The surprised Orochimaru's face sank and asked, "Does Amatsukami want to go against me?" Hyojin said lightly, "As long as you let her go, I will leave immediately." Seeing Hyojin's attitude, Orochimaru became interested and asked Hyojin with a smile, "Why do you care so much about my ninja?" Hyojin replied, "It has nothing to do with you." Orochimaru smiled and looked at Kurenai with a scrutinizing face. "Don't look at me. I don't even know him." After retorting to Orochimaru, Kurenai secretly looked at Hyojin on the dome. Thinking secretly, the mask on his face is the pattern of the wind, so he should be the member of Amatsukami who has the magnetic release Kekkei limit, which is the companion of Amatsukami. But I don't know him. Why would he take the risk to save me? At this time, Orochimaru put away the smile on his face and said solemnly, "In 3 days, I will return her to you unscathed. Is that okay?" Kurenai also looked at Kuroto in a daze, feeling a little nervous in her heart. She wasn't sure if Kuroto would really fight against Orochimaru, one of the Sannin who almost stands at the peak of the shinobi world, just for her. Hyojin did not hesitate at all and directly said, "Let her go immediately." Orochimaru smiled and said with a playful face, "In that case, I have no choice but to get rid of you." Hyojin's expression did not change at all. As a disciple of Orochimaru, he knew Orochimaru's nature better than anyone else, and he knew that the name Amatsukami would not be able to deter the lawless Orochimaru, and in the end, they would have to fight. But for Kuroto, this wasn't a bad thing. After all, he also hoped to have a good fight to his heart's content to test the combat ability of the Type A wind release clone, and Orochimaru, who couldn't be killed no matter how many times he fought, was obviously a good practice opponent. At this time, Orochimaru gently bit his finger, put his hands together, and with his hoarse voice he said, "Spirit summoning technique. Impure earth reincarnation." Boom! In a puff of white smoke, 2 upright coffins appeared on the back of the green snake. Looking at the 2 coffins marked with the words first and second on the coffins, Hyojin, who was originally eager to fight, suddenly changed his expression. Ugh, no way, this is too big. Although he knew that Orochimaru had been studying the forbidden technique, impure earth reincarnation, Hyojin really did not think that he would have to fight the first and second generation Naruto in this way at this moment. Clang, as the lid of the coffin slowly opened and fell to the ground, 2 figures walked out of the coffin in a wobbly manner. Seeing the figure that walked out of the coffin, Red was dumbfounded. First, second. Although the first and second generation had passed away for decades, as a mind ninja, it did not take Red much effort to recognize the one in red armor. Chapter 451. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 figures' fists and feet collided with each other, producing a series of muffled sounds. The names of the first generation and the second generation were indeed quite intimidating. However, after exchanging blows, Hyojin found that whether it was strength or speed, the first generation and the second generation's impure earth body was not as strong as he had imagined. It could be said that it was far inferior to his Type A wind release clone body. Just SOSO. After testing the strength of the first generation and the second generation's impure earth body, Hyojin felt relieved. Then, his moves also became fierce. He directly punched the first generation's impure earth body in the face and sent it flying. Then his figure swayed, turned around, and with a sweep, the second generation's impure earth body was also sent flying. Boom! Boom! In the roar, the first generation and the second generation's impure earth bodies that were sent flying fiercely hit the stone wall in the distance. The 2 high walls that were originally standing on the top of the ruins each had a clear dent. On the back of the green snake, Orochimaru's eyes were cold, and he secretly said, "Damn, this guy's physical technique is so strong." As the controller of the first generation and the second generation's impure earth body, Orochimaru naturally knew that these 2 impure earth bodies could not be compared to the real first generation and the second generation. This was because of the strength of the sacrifice factor and also the restrictions that Orochimaru added himself. Because this was originally an experimental attempt, this time the body sacrifice that Orochimaru prepared for the first generation and the second generation was just the most common Chunin's corpse. In the original space and time, he used the special white Zetsu as the sacrifice during the 4th Ninja World War to summon the past generations of Naruto's impure earth body. On top of that, Orochimaru was wary of the first generation and second generation strength. Before using the impure earth reincarnation, he had added several techniques to bind the first generation and second generation spiritual bodies. Although this greatly increased his control over the first generation and second generation's impure Earth physique, it also greatly weakened the first generation and second generation strength. But even with all these restrictions, the physical technique level of the first generation and second generation Earth form was definitely at the level of an elite Jonin. Even if Orochimaru personally took action, it would take some effort to deal with these two Earth form in the physical technique competition. So, after seeing Hyojin repelling the two Earth form so easily, Orochimaru showed obvious fear of Hyojin's physical technique strength. At this moment, Hyojin suddenly waved his right hand. Two waves of black iron sand separated from his body, engulfing outwards, firmly wrapping around the exceptional talent and second generation's dirt bodies that were lying in the wall depression, making them look like two iron sand silkworm cocoons. Then, Hyojin's gaze turned to Orochimaru, who was on the back of the green snake. Feeling the cold and bone-chilling killing intent from Hyojin, even Orochimaru, who was used to killing, could not help but tremble in his heart, and his originally playful expression gradually froze. Red, who was beside Orochimaru, slightly opened her mouth and murmured, "So strong." Swoosh! With a flash, Hyojin, who was on the dome of the ruins, leaped into the sky. Then, a pair of huge black wings spread out from his back. Orochimaru and Red, who were on the back of the green snake, raised their heads at the same time and looked at Hyojin in the sky. The huge black wings on Hyojin's back, together with his black cloak with golden edges and the wind pattern mask on his face, made Red even have the illusion that his opponent was a night angel. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, Hyojin flew to the back of the green snake while the black spear made of iron sand in his hand accurately pierced Orochimaru's heart. "You?" Orochimaru looked at Hyojin in horror. His expression was full of disbelief. Kurenai was also shocked. "He killed Orochimaru," Hyojin said lightly. "Put away your lame performance." Orochimaru put away the rich expression on his face, and the corner of his mouth twitched. "I thought you were just the most inconspicuous person in Amatsukami, but it seems that I have underestimated you." After saying that, Orochimaru's body exploded into a cloud of white smoke with a bang, and then the green snake under their feet also disappeared in a burst of white smoke. With the sudden disappearance of the green snake, Red, whose hands were still tied behind her back, suddenly lost her balance and cried out in shock. When the green snake stood up, it was more than 10 meters tall, close to the height of a 5-story building. Falling from such a height, if one's body was in a state of restraint, even a ninja would not be able to withstand it. Just when Red closed her eyes, thinking that she would not be able to escape, her falling body suddenly stopped. She opened her eyes abruptly and found herself in the arms of the member of Amatsukami wearing the wind pattern mask. The rope that tied her hands had also been cut off. After landing steadily, Hyojin asked Red, "Are you okay?" Red was stunned for a moment. Although the other party's tone gave off a cold and distant feeling, she could clearly feel that the other party really cared about her. Seeing that Red seemed to be stunned, Hyojin thought that Orochimaru had done something to her body. He quickly used the supercilious eye to carefully observe Red's body and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Red, who recovered from her shock, quickly pushed Hyojin away and immediately turned her face to the side. "I'm fine. Who are you? Why did you save me?" Just as Hyojin was about to casually say something, the ground suddenly shook. Red, who was a little distracted, staggered and fell into Hyojin's arms again. Hyojin, however, did not care about Red. His eyes swept around and said, "We're in trouble." Red blurted out in surprise, "What trouble?" Before Red's voice died away, trees broke out of the ground one after another and rose from the ground. The trees that originally existed in the surroundings seemed to have come alive and grew wildly. Wood release. Red was so shocked that she covered her mouth. At this time, Hyojin did not care about anything else and directly said, "Hold me tight." He had to rush out of this forest before the first-generation dirt body completely activated the descent of the world of trees. Otherwise, even with the magnetic escape, he would not be able to withstand the endless attacks of the wood escape. With a whoosh, a pair of huge black wings unfolded behind Kuroto's back, and immediately after that, he took off from the ground and flew towards the sky with Kuroto. However, the rapidly growing trees interweaved into an impenetrable net above Suijin's head, trapping him and Kurenai like a bird in a cage. The first-generation dirt body and second-generation dirt body that had broken free of the iron sand moved agilely in the forest that was like a maze. From different directions, they pounced on Hyojin and Red, who were entangled by the trees. On the dome of the ruins, Orochimaru, who had used the shadow clone technique to avoid Hyojin's surprise attack, was now looking at the fierce battle in the forest with great interest. Seeing that Hyojin was so protective of Red, he thought to himself, "Did this guy really stop me because of Red?" Chapter 452. Originally, Orochimaru did not believe that the members of Amatsuki suddenly appeared just to save Kurenai. After all, Kurenai was just an ordinary ninja. There was no reason for Amatsuki to spend so much effort to save her. However, when he saw Hyojin trying his best to save Kurenai, he was a little uncertain. Could it be that this is just Winshim's personal action and has nothing to do with Amatsuki? And it has nothing to do with the Sword of 10 Punches? Suddenly, Orochimaru had a guess in his mind. It was very likely that Winshim from Amatsuki knew Kurenai, and the two of them had some kind of relationship. In the forest, countless trees grew crazily and endlessly, entangling Hyojin. Although he tried his best to slash, the space he had to dodge and move around was being squeezed little by little. Kurenai wanted to help, but because of the remaining poison in her body, she could not use her strength at all and could not refine chakra. Seeing that Kurenai was entangled by a few branches and was about to be dragged out of his control area, Hyojin thought to himself, "Women are so troublesome." Immediately, he clenched his right fist and pulled it into his arms. A ball of black iron sand immediately turned into a big hand, grabbed Kurenai, and took her away from the branches. At this moment, he suddenly saw that his second-generation earth form not far away from him. It was standing upside down under a twisted tree trunk, its hands slowly forming a seal. That is, Hyojin's eyes narrowed, and he immediately shouted, "Oh no!" When developing the water release clone, Hyojin had studied a lot of water release ninjutsu, so he quickly recognized the ninjutsu that the second-generation earth form was about to use. It was the extremely destructive S-class water release ninjutsu, Water Wave Breaker. Whoosh, with a crisp sound, a torrent of water was spat out from the mouth of the second-generation earth form. This torrent of water was condensed into a water line as thick as a finger by the high-intensity water attribute chakra. Like a water knife, it easily cut down all the trees in front of it and went straight for Hyojin and Kurenai. Without any hesitation, Suijin appeared in front of Kuroto, blocking Kuroto's path. With this level of ninjutsu, even if Kurenai was slightly scratched, she would be severely injured, if not dead, and with Kurenai's current physical state, she definitely can't dodge, so Hyojin can only choose to use his own body to resist. After all, it's just a clone. Red, who didn't know what was going on, stared blankly at Hyojin, who was standing in front of her. Something seemed to have been touched in her heart. Chi-Chi, the torrent, which had been condensed into a straight line, slashed towards the giant sand shield in front of Hyojin like a sharp blade, producing a sharp, ear-piercing sound that made people's eardrums hurt. Almost at the same time as the sharp sound rang out, the iron sand shield was sliced into two by the torrent. The torrent didn't lose any of its momentum after shattering the iron sand shield. It drew a beautiful arc in the air and slashed toward Hyojin. What? Kuroto had guessed that the iron shield formed by the magnet release wouldn't be able to block the water wave cut of the second-generation earth form, but he didn't expect that the iron shield wouldn't even have the slightest effect. With a swoosh, the torrent slashed through Hyojin's body. Crack! The mask with the wind pattern on Hyojin's face shattered and fell to the ground. Not only that, the black cloak he was wearing with golden edges was also cut open, and blood gushed out from under the cloak. Huff! Huff! Half squatting on the ground, Hyojin lowered his head and panted heavily. His long gray hair covered his face. Red, who was behind him, was already at a loss. Seeing Hyojin's chest covered in blood, she said hurriedly, "Don't worry about me. Run quickly. No one can defeat the first generation and the second generation together." After panting a few times, Hyojin said in a deep voice, "Shut up and hide behind me." After saying that, he stood up and pulled Red behind him. At this moment, although he looked very miserable with blood flowing all over his body, it was actually only a few superficial wounds. Since the water-breaking ripple just now did not hurt his internal organs at all, it was completely blocked by the periosteum he created by activating the corpse bone meridian. At most, it only cut the skin on his chest. However, the wound was a little big and a lot of blood flowed out, so it looked very serious on the outside. "Orochimaru, don't force me to use the corpse bone meridian. Otherwise, I won't be able to stop myself from killing you." After cursing, Hyojin rolled his eyes and observed Orochimaru's position. The first generation and second generation's earth body were immortal. No matter how many times they were destroyed, they could revive on the spot, unless one used the truth-seeking ball or the sealing technique to deal with them. There was no other way. There was no need to mention the truth-seeking ball. The Type A wind escape clone that Hyojin was controlling couldn't be used at all. As for the sealing technique, not any random sealing technique could deal with the filthy earth physique of the first generation and the second generation. In the original space-time, the third generation used the ghost corpse seal when facing such a situation. It could be seen that the shrewd and ruthless third generation had already determined that ordinary sealing techniques were ineffective against the filthy earth physique of the first and second generation. Only the top-level sealing technique, Corpse Ghost Seal, could solve the problem. If it was just a one-on-one battle, Kuroto would still have the confidence to try using the four-symbol seal, but 1 against 2, not to mention that there is also a hindrance by his side, try to use the four-symbol seal to deal with the impure earth form of the first and second Mind-sama is simply a pipe dream. At this moment, the surroundings suddenly darkened. All the light seemed to be sucked away in an instant. Red exclaimed, "What's going on?" Hyojin quickly remembered a technique in his memory. It was an illusion technique called the dark walking technique. However, it didn't matter much to him who had the high purity of the Byakugan. In his field of vision with the Byakugan, the color of the surroundings only became a little darker. With a loud, swooshing sound, the surrounding trees, under the cover of the darkness, surged forward. Seeing that the endless trees were about to completely swallow Red, Hyojin had a helpless expression. He could only put his palms together. Pa! Along with the crisp sound of the palm strike, the magnetic release chakra on Hyojin's body suddenly expanded. All the black iron sand quickly gathered into strong steel bars. In a breath's time, it had built an iron cage, covering Red's entire body in the iron cage. It blocked the surrounding trees that were surging forward. In the pitch-black darkness, Red, who was in the iron cage, felt around and shouted, "Hey, where are you?" However, there was no response from Hyojin. There was only the rustling sound of the trees moving. After using all the black iron sand to protect Red, in just a short moment, Hyojin's body was surrounded by 3 layers of endless trees. Trapped in a heavy entanglement, Hyojin curled his lips and thought to himself, "How unlucky. If I knew this would happen, I would have prepared more black iron sand before I left." Chapter 453. On the dome of the Uchiha ruins, Orochimaru crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at the fierce battle in the forest in the distance with a solemn expression. No ninja could resist the wood-release secret technique descent of the world of trees. This had been proven countless times when my village was established. Therefore, Orochimaru was convinced that he would be the winner, but for some reason, he always felt weak in his heart, as if he had missed something. At this moment, the fierce battle in the forest came to an abrupt end. The crazily growing and twisting trees also stopped. Everything seemed to have returned to the calm before the battle. Orochimaru raised the corner of his mouth. Is it over? It was different from the impure earth reincarnation performed by Satu in the original space and time. On one hand, it was because the current research on impure earth reincarnation was not deep enough. On the other hand, it was to ensure absolute control of the first and second generation impure earth bodies. Orochimaru's impure earth reincarnation was more conservative than Satu's. He did not have the authority that a controller should have. For example, like Satu, Orochimaru could not use his will to occupy the body of the impure earth body at will, nor could he directly perceive the situation on the battlefield through the impure earth body like Satu and remotely control it from a long distance. But at the same time, he would not be perceived by the impure earth body like Satu in the original space and time, because Satu established a long-distance chakra connection with the impure earth body. Itachi perceived him in reverse and found his hiding place directly. Itachi came to him and gave him an Izanami, which became the key to turning the tide of the Fourth Shinobi World War. Because he could not directly perceive the situation on the battlefield through the impure earth body, Orochimaru could not confirm the situation at the moment. But through observation from afar, the experienced Orochimaru judged that the battle in the forest had ended. Emetsukami is just SOSO. After a light snort, Orochimaru slowly raised his hands and was ready to cancel the psychic link. Suddenly, the earth trembled again. Orochimaru's eyes narrowed, and his raised hand stopped in the air. He said to himself, "Hey, that guy is still resisting." Boom! 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 As soon as he finished speaking, a shocking scene appeared in front of him. Amidst the rumbling sound waves, sharp white bone spears rose from the ground. These bone spears that broke out of the ground were extraordinarily sharp. All the trees that blocked their path were easily pierced and cut to pieces. In the blink of an eye, the originally boundless green forest had turned into a pale, white forest of bones. The corpse bone vein. Orochimaru was startled and murmured, "There are other people here." The pale white bone forest was still spreading in all directions. Soon, the bone spears that kept rising had invaded the ruins of Uchiha. The incomparably sharp bone blades were like tofu, easily piercing through the stone walls of the ruins and piercing through the circular dome of the ruins. Orochimaru's figure swayed as he narrowly avoided a bone spear that suddenly pierced from under his feet, and looking at the bone spear that quickly passed by his cheek and then extended into the air, Orochimaru's expression was incomparably solemn. At this time, a figure suddenly appeared on a bone spear behind Orochimaru. The figure held a bone blade in his hand and slashed at him without hesitation. Swoosh! The bone blade slashed across, bringing with it a splash of blood. Although Orochimaru was alarmed, he was still half a step late. Although he escaped the fate of being cut in half, his back was cut open by a deep wound that revealed his bones. As he turned around and retreated, he looked at the figure who had sneakily attacked him. He immediately frowned and said, "Windling." Although the person who attacked him had merged into the bone spear and disappeared after the attack, he could still recognize the person's identity with a quick glance. Immediately, he was shocked and thought to himself, "This Windling actually has the magnetic release and the corpse bone vein, 2 blood limits. Could it be that he has also used the Chimera technique?" Suppressing the doubts in his heart, Orochimaru vigilantly looked around. He knew that the technique that the opponent had used was the strongest secret technique of the corpse bone vein, called Dance of the Early Fern. Once this secret technique was used, the entire bone forest would become the opponent's home ground. The opponent could quietly travel through the bone forest at will. Whether it was perceptive ninjutsu or occult techniques, it would be very difficult to detect. It was the trump card of the Kagaya clan. The only drawback of this technique was that it placed a heavy burden on the body of the user. Even the patriarch of the Kagaya clan would not use this technique unless it was absolutely necessary. Puff, puff, puff. At this time, there was a sound like steam rising from the wound on Orochimaru's back. In the white smoke, the deep wound on his back was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. That attack just now was definitely a fatal blow to a normal ninja, but to Orochimaru, it was nothing. He had mastered the flesh regeneration secret technique and the undead reincarnation forbidden technique, so he could unscrupulously squeeze out the potential of his body. Even if he used up the number of cell divisions in his body, he could just change to another body. Boom, boom, boom. The forest in the distance was also very lively at this time. The trees and the bone spears were intertwined and entangled with each other. One moment, countless trees would entangle and break the bone spears, and the next moment, the bone spears would cut down the trees one by one. Orochimaru glanced in the distance. At this time, there was no longer any meaning for the first generation and second generation's impure earth form to continue entangling with the bone spears in the forest. So, he wanted to make a hand seal and summon them over. As long as he had the first generation and second generation's impure earth form by his side, he was confident that he could drag it out until the opponent's chakra was exhausted. But just as he was about to make a hand seal, a few figures suddenly jumped out from the bone spears in all directions and pounced at him together. Bone doppelganger? Orochimaru's face darkened. He immediately pushed his hands outwards and shouted, "Hidden shadow, snake hand." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Countless poisonous snakes, as thick as an arm, shot out from Orochimaru's sleeves and entangled the bone doppelganger that was pouncing on him. But before these poisonous snakes could get close, they were cut into pieces by Hyojin's bone doppelganger with its bone blades. In a burst of bloody mist, they turned into indistinguishable lumps of flesh that were indistinguishable. Orochimaru frowned slightly. He quickly took out 2 kunai and guarded in front of him. Bang! With a sharp, crisp sound, a bone doppelganger waved its bone blade and cut off the kunai in Orochimaru's hand along with his arm. Hiss! Orochimaru sucked in a breath of cold air. His snake-like pupils suddenly shrank, and his face was full of surprise. He knew that the opponent's bone spears were very sharp, but he didn't expect them to be this sharp. They were far stronger than the strength of Kimimura's bone blade. They were almost comparable to his Kusanagi sword. Instantly, he fiercely patted his abdomen with his remaining hand and spat out a Kusanagi sword from his mouth. He used the Kusanagi sword in his mouth to block a few bone blade attacks. Then, his figure flashed, and he fled into the distant forest. Chapter 454. Orochimaru wasn't afraid of normal physical attacks. However, when he faced Hyojin's bone blade that could cut through iron like mud, his elusive figure, and his swift and fierce physical skills, he felt a sense of fear that he hadn't felt for a long time. After all, if his body was cut into pieces, the flesh regeneration secret technique would be meaningless. Clang, clang. While running, Orochimaru kept using his Kusanagi no Tsurugi to block Hyojin's bone clone's attacks. The ear-piercing sound of metal clashing could be heard incessantly, as if he was forging iron. Why is this guy's physical skills so strong? Orochimaru claimed that his physical skills weren't bad, and he had seen many physical skills experts before. However, he had never met an opponent as fierce and ghostly as the one in front of him. Suddenly, he felt as if he had returned to the time when he was training with Hatake Shwomo in the village. Indeed, the pressure that the opponent in front of him gave him reminded him of the strong man known as Mai's White Fang, the man who killed his enemies with just a short knife. Looking at Orochimaru, who was running away in a panic, Hyojin's expression was calm as he shuttled through the bone forest. After many years of training, his physical skills had been continuously improving. In addition, his Type A wind-release clone body was a mutated body with a small probability. It had a pure bloodline and excellent bones. It was almost perfect in every aspect, far surpassing his water release clone and fire release clone. It was even stronger than his Een release clone. Coupled with the high-purity Byakugan and the Corpse Bone Meridian, that was even stronger than Kimimaro, he was simply a merciless killing machine. It was only because he met Orochimaru that he was able to hold on for a long time. If it was any other enemy, he would have killed them like cutting melons and vegetables. Swoosh, along with the sound of wind breaking, the ghostly bone blade slashed at Orochimaru again, cutting him in half from the waist. Blood splattered all over the ground, dyeing the white bone spears around them red. Only half of Orochimaru's body was left. He groaned as he crawled on the ground, struggling in vain. At this time, Hyojin stepped out of a bone spear and glanced at Orochimaru coldly. Through the observation of the Byakugan, he could confirm that the Orochimaru in front of him was not a shadow clone, but his real body. This was because shadow clones would disappear after being attacked. Even in the final battle with Sasuke in the original space, Naruto's shadow clone that contained the Yang release and immortal arts could only block punches and kicks. It would also disappear if it was pierced by ninja arts. Orochimaru turned over his body with difficulty and looked at Hyojin. He was stunned. Your eyes? As the mask was damaged in the previous battle, the appearance of the Type A wind release clone was revealed. Swoosh! Just as the bone blade in Kuroto's hand was about to cut through Second Earth Monster, Second Earth Monster's figure suddenly disappeared and reappeared beside Kuroto, grabbing the kunai that was thrown at Kuroto just now and slashing at Kuroto. In an instant, a large area of Red's chest was stained with blood. Hyojin's eyes turned cold. Flying Thunder God technique? After the successful sneak attack, Second Generation did not fight with Hyojin and immediately swam away. At the same time, the water was also rapidly receding. When the Second Generation Fill Soil Body and the First Generation Fill Soil Body converged, the water that had flooded the entire forest had completely receded, leaving only a muddy ground. Hyojin glanced at Orochimaru, who had taken the opportunity to escape in a panic. He did not choose to chase after him because he had already noticed that when Second Generation sneak attacked Red, it had secretly left a string of techniques on the back of Red's waist. Looking at the style of the technique, it was the marking technique of Second Generation's Flying Thunder God technique. If Hyojin pursued it this time, Second Generation could use the Flying Thunder God technique to teleport over and kill Red at any time. Orochimaru, who was fleeing in panic, looked back at the battlefield behind him. After confirming that Hyojin did not choose to chase after him, he let out a long sigh of relief and thought to himself, it seems that Winchim's appearance here is not because of the Sword of 10 Punches. How unlucky. Forget it. I'll think about the Sword of 10 Punches later. The reason why Orochimaru asked the Second Generation Dirt Body to ambush Kurenai was not only to free himself, but also to test whether Winchim's appearance here was really just for Kurenai. However, this kind of elimination required time. Even with the chakra strength of the clone body Type A, it will take at least an hour or so to completely erase the coordinates left by the Second Generation Earth form on Kuroto's body, and during this time, the clone body Type A can't be disturbed. Therefore, if the coordinate technique of the Flying Thunder God technique was placed on one's body during a battle, it would be very passive. Only by casting a sealing technique on oneself could the coordinate technique on one's body be rendered ineffective. In the blink of an hour had passed. After an hour of hard work, Hyojin finally removed the coordinate technique left on Red by the Second Generation. He then stood up and looked at the Uchiha ruins not far away. What the hell are Jishuei and Itachi doing? I've been fighting outside, but why haven't they reacted at all? Haven't they arrived yet? Hyojin quickly denied this guess because when he received the message from the ninja crow, Jishuei and Itachi should have already arrived here. Could it be that there was an accident? Hyojin's face darkened, and then he walked toward the Uchiha ruins. Behind him, the black iron sand carried the unconscious Red and floated in the air, slowly following behind him. Not long after, Hyojin arrived inside the Uchiha ruins. Puff at this time, he spat out a big mouthful of blood, and his whole body staggered a few steps, almost falling to the ground. At the same time, the iron sandball behind him that was floating in the air with Red also began to collapse. As it disintegrated, the black iron sand fell from the iron sandball bit by bit. Hyojin quickly leaned against a wall and controlled the iron sand to slowly put the unconscious Red on the ground. After panting for a while, he curled his lips and said, "Damn, I didn't expect the blood inheritance disease to be so fierce." It seems that using the bone vein this time was a bit too much. From the first time he spat out blood, Hyojin knew that it was the bone vein blood inheritance disease that was causing trouble. The Type A wind release clone was too good, and because of this, it was always under the threat of the blood inheritance disease. In terms of situation, it was even more dangerous than Kimimaro. But because it was inevitable, Hyojin didn't care too much. After wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he didn't care about Red anymore. He directly put Red aside and started to look for Jishuei and Itachi in the ruins alone. The battle just now has caused serious damage to the Uchiha ruins. The dome in many areas has collapsed, and the internal structure has also suffered a lot of damage. Some of the stone chambers have even been destroyed beyond recognition. With the help of the Byakugan, Hyojin quickly found the tomb hidden underground. But there was no one in the tomb. There was only an empty coffin and a giant stone statue in the shape of a gourd.